My Marvel superhero girlfriend. Hey. Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction, so don't try any techniques you hear here in real life. Your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 376, Nian's Alliance, Confession. Happy New Year. By the way, what's the name of our alliance? You haven't told me yet. Gwen suddenly remembered something important. Destiny, Nian replied slowly. Destiny Alliance. Ever since Spider-Woman Gwen joined, Nian had headed straight for New York. I want to see your boss. Nian arrived alone near the headquarters of Future Chronicle Company. At the reception desk on the first floor of a luxurious 5-star hotel, he addressed the elegantly poised receptionist. Not everyone can see our boss. You need to make an appointment in advance. Of course, even with an appointment, you can't guarantee an appointment. The attractive receptionist was taken aback at first, then said coldly, looking at the dark-haired boy. Anyway, I want to see her today. Nian blinked, feigning a hint of sarcasm. All right then, the receptionist sighed helplessly, then changed the subject. Now, you've seen our boss. This time it was Nian's turn to be stunned. He looked around, extending his spider sense, but there was no sign of Lorna. The receptionist suddenly bowed respectfully to Nian and said, Boss, good evening. Boss, it's me. Nian pointed at himself with a strange expression. What was going on? The receptionist quickly and politely replied, Yes, you are Mr. Nian Prince, right? A week ago, the former owner informed us that the hotel has been transferred to your name. A week ago? Nian thought about it. Wasn't that right after the Sokovia War? Besides, this receptionist was also one of the gang members who had worked under Lorna. She had obviously recognized him long ago, so she was playing a joke on him. Nian asked directly, Where's your boss? She's on the second floor. The receptionist picked up the landline and reported to the second floor. The hotel, the brightly lit second floor main hall. Nian arrived and saw a familiar figure sitting in the same luxurious armchair. However, it was a little different from before. What's wrong, little brother? You see my confused and surprised expression. The green-haired girl in the armchair smiled wildly. Today, Lorna was no longer wearing her usual men's suit. Instead, she wore a long, toe-length light blue dress. Her delicate feet, clad in beige high heels, were raised with legs crossed, her figure forming a graceful curve from head to toe as she sat on the chair. The dress was a cool, strapless, sleeveless style, revealing her fair, slender arms and a perfectly formed, delicate neck. A metal necklace, matching Nian's, adorned her neck. In her dress, Lorna looked less heroic and domineering, more gentle and elegant. Her skin was very fair, lightly pink, and her dark green, slightly curly hair draped lazily over her shoulders, giving her an overall elegant and beautiful look. In the past, Lorna had already been stunning in a men's suit, but now in her long dress, she was like the North Star in the night sky, radiant and stunning. Nian was stunned. He hadn't expected Lorna to look like this in a long dress. How does it look? Lorna shifted her waist slightly uncomfortably. The dress's thin, soft fabric, coupled with the tightness of the corset, gave her the impression that it would burst if thrown into battle. Very feminine, Nian said instinctively. So, I wasn't feminine before. Lorna's eyebrows knitted together, her beautiful eyes gazing at Nian with indignation. That's not what I meant. Nian waved his hand hastily, continuing his compliments. It looks great, and suits you very well, boss. Really? As long as you like it, Lorna said casually, her face expressionless. Nian's heart skipped a beat, his pulse accelerating considerably. Lorna said nothing more, turning away and urging, sit down quickly. Nian took a seat in the single chair in front, facing Lorna. Curiously, boss, did the front desk just say you transferred this hotel to my name? Yes, we didn't tell you. Now you know, that's all, Lorna said matter-of-factly. Previously, Nian had thought the front desk had made a mistake. Now, with confirmation from the Polaris boss, Nian's confusion intensified. Why? Why transfer it to me? Lorna folded her arms and replied with a defiant air, "Why so many whys? I just wanted to do it." Zinnian stared at her intently, awaiting her response. As if scalding under Zinnian's gaze, Lorna waved her hands irritably. "All right. Didn't you save Petra's life? Consider this a reward." Zinnian's expression dawned on him, and he spoke sincerely. "It's only natural for me to help Pietro. Wanda is also family to me. There's no need for you to reward me, boss." He knew that Lorna had purchased and run this hotel with funds she had worked so hard for since she was a child. Furthermore, most of the staff were Lorna's former employees, so the hotel embodied much of her life's work. "It's yours. I can't take it." Zinnian, in a rare display of assertiveness before Lorna. "Idiot." Luna's beautiful pale green eyes were filled with regret. She clenched her fists and shouted, "Do you want me to explain it more clearly? 3 years ago, I indirectly caused you to face a life or death crisis. This is my compensation for what I did to you back then." Seeing that Nian wanted to say something, Luna continued, "I know this hotel doesn't mean much to you. But it's all I have. Giving it to you will make me feel less guilty." Nian was silent for a moment. He stopped refusing and sighed softly, "I'll take it." Although he said that, in reality, he was just trying to help Luna's agency. "Isn't that right?" Luna raised her radiant chin coldly, her mood noticeably relaxed and cheerful. "What's the matter with you coming to see me?" I do. Nian spoke directly to Luna about the alliance. "I see." Lorna didn't appear surprised, her lips curled upward. "Ever since you went to court last time, I knew you wouldn't accept the current passive situation. I wonder if you're willing." Before Nian could finish, Lorna hooked her finger and commanded, "Brother, give me the so-called dimension ring." Nian was startled, then pulled out a dimension ring he had prepared long ago from his pocket. Lorna took it and slipped it on her finger. "Boss, what are you doing?" Nian was still a little confused. "I agree. However, this isn't to compensate you or thank you." Polaris Lorna rose gracefully from her chair. With her slender right index finger, adorned with a ring, her light green eyes calm and composed, she pointed between Nian's eyebrows as he sat in front of her. The corner of her mouth lifted casually, her tone calm yet incredibly firm. "It's because I like you. Happy New Year." May all single readers find success in expressing their feelings in the new year. Book friends who have subscribed to the Fold book can join the group and send red envelopes frequently. The portal is in the book's introduction. Chapter 377, Nian and Luna. North Star chapter back. The main lobby on the second floor of the hotel suddenly fell silent. Nian sat motionless in his chair, his gaze fixed on the ringed index finger between his eyebrows. Continuing his gaze, he caught sight of Luna, her lips curled up with pride. It's said that the first person to confess their love in a relationship is the weaker one, almost letting the one being confessed to have the upper hand. But Luna, the North Star, showed no hesitation or fear. Even as she confessed, she lifted her radiant chin with pride and dominance, her pale green eyes blazing at Nian. Her star-like eyes held only one person. "Boss, you." Nian opened his mouth. "Don't ask me, I don't know when I fell in love with you." Luna looked him straight in the eye and continued, "Maybe it was 3 years ago, when you saved me and treated me like family. Maybe it was when I saw you again 3 years later. Maybe it was when we first met, or maybe it was when we kissed for the last time. In any case, I'm absolutely certain that I love you." Luna's beautiful eyes shone with stars, her tone firm, her gaze and expression unwavering. "I used to believe a person could face anything, even life and death, the end of the world. But after meeting you, I found myself growing increasingly weak and helpless, yearning for support, and that was a beautiful state of mind." She paused, her tone filled with anticipation and hope. "If one could find someone to form a family with, regardless of blood ties, then you are the only person I've ever wanted to be a family with. Without you by my side, the meaning of my life would be completely lost." Lorna's sincere and steady words landed powerfully in the main hall. Up ahead, Nian's heartbeat quickened as he sat on the single sofa. No one could resist such a confession from a woman, and that woman was Lorna, the leader of the North Star. Hanging in the night sky with unparalleled dominance, radiating a solitary, cold starlight, the brilliant and outstanding North Star. Nian discovered that, without knowing when, he had fallen for the independent and self-reliant Lorna. Outside the main hall on the second floor of the hotel. From the hotel lobby manager to the cleaning attendant, 20 or 30 of Lorna's former gang members were crouched against the door, trying to eavesdrop through the crack. Boss seems to be really confessing his feelings. Go ahead, boss. If that guy doesn't agree, we'll go in and chop him up. You dare? Besides, can you beat him? Yeah, that's right. They were all Lorna's followers, male or female, and many had once harbored feelings of admiration for her. But then, they realized they weren't good enough for her. No one in the group was. Even though that little girl had been scavenging garbage for a living since she was a few years old, living in the squalor of the slums for years, she couldn't hide her captivating radiance. Tonight, under the light reflected in the glass, Lorna, dressed in a gorgeous white dress, had bright eyes and rosy lips. Her dark green hair set off her skin, as white as jade, a dazzling radiance. I like you, and it has something to do with you. Lorna looked directly at Nian and opened her lips softly. But I know you already have someone else in your heart. I won't let you let them go. But I will fight for your heart. I want to be even more important in your heart, more important than anyone else. Because I'm the North Star. The North Star that never gives in or admits defeat. As Lorna spoke, her index finger traced down Nian's face, and she gently pinched his chin with one hand, tilting it up. She lowered her head, her dark green hair scattered, and leaned forward with her alluring curves, gently exhaling a fragrant warm breath as she moved forward. The next morning. The cool morning light filtered in through the cracks in the window, brightening the room. Nian woke from his bed, which was as black as the night sky. He stood up, yawned softly, and rubbed his dark green hair. Subconsciously, he wanted to call the maid. Wanda, why didn't you wake me up? Huh? He quickly realized that he was not at home. A luxurious and spacious hotel room. Nian slowly turned his head and saw a slender arm vaguely sticking out from the quilt beside him. The snow-white color on the dark bed was extremely dazzling, and the morning light made it even more lustrous. Some dark green curly hair peeked out from under the quilt. Nian slapped his forehead, vaguely recalling what happened last night. Wanda was not here, but Wanda's. Nian felt inexplicably guilty, although he didn't know where the guilt came from. He knew that the other party would not wake up for a while, and he was clearly the boss's younger brother before, but now he was like this. Nian had not yet fully adapted to this, so he covered the other party with a quilt and quietly pulled it open to stand up. He stepped barefoot on the ground. He stepped directly on the gorgeous long skirt made of fine fabric, which was torn. Nian's mouth twitched slightly. Nian dared to raise his hands to guarantee that it was not him who did it. He was not so violent before. Find the slippers. With a gentle wave of his hand, Nian's magic levitation cloak, hanging on a hanger, flew forward, draped over him and transformed into a windbreaker uniform. He tiptoed, afraid to wake the other person, and exited the suite, closing the door behind him. As the door quietly closed, the quilt shuddered on the bed. Luna rolled over, wrapped in the quilt, ruffled her messy dark green hair, opened her beautiful eyes, and muttered, "Coward. A little brother is a little brother. I can never climb up." Luna hummed as she spoke, a charming blush spreading across her beautiful face. That's true. Nian emerged from the second-floor hotel suite, his guilty, fleeing demeanor giving him the illusion that he'd been raped. "Boss, good morning." In the hotel corridor, the staff on duty bowed respectfully as they saw Nian passing by. This time, they truly treated Nian like a boss, a leader. "Good morning," Nian nodded in reply. "Boss, I'll prepare breakfast for you right away. You can add eggs," a female employee of the hotel said enthusiastically. "No, I'll go home and eat." Nian's eye twitched. Why did he feel that everyone in the hotel knew about it? Spider Sense noticed that some female employees couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh after he left, and their eyes fell on his feet. Nian lowered his head and found that he was still wearing the slippers in the hotel suite. Hotel slippers with uniform windbreaker. Nian gave himself full marks for embarrassment. If I had known earlier, I would have used the space necklace to go back directly. Nian sighed secretly. He didn't teleport back directly because he was afraid that the little maid at home would notice something. This might be the biggest source of his guilty conscience. Number 1 took a day off, and number 2 will update early today. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378, The Fifth Permanent Ability. Nian, still feeling a bit guilty, emerged from his second-floor hotel suite in slippers when he was quickly stopped by a white man in a suit. Looking up, Nian saw he was in his 20s, tall and handsome, with dyed green hair styled in a slicked-back style common among elites. At this moment, the white man paused in the hallway for no apparent reason, glancing at the closed door of the suite at the far end. Then, his eyes fixed on Nian with a complex expression. He took a deep breath and spoke slowly. I didn't expect it. In the end, you succeeded. You are? Nian asked. Oh. The green-haired man, as if stepped on, pointed at his flushed face and shouted through gritted teeth, have you forgotten who I am? Hello, manager. In the hotel hallway, a staff member bowed and greeted the green-haired man. Fuck you. Get out of here. The green-haired man glared back at the staff member, his eyes filled with indignation. I remember now, Nian said suddenly, you're AI. AI something. Edik. The green-haired man added in exasperation. He'd thought the man would at least remember his name, after all, he was at least a half-rival, right? Clearly, he'd overestimated it. Yes, that's Edk, Nian nodded, remembering that the man was one of Luna's former gang's fervent followers. 3 years ago, when Nian was rescuing Luna, who had a bad cold, some members of the gang wanted to join forces and eliminate Luna, the leader. At the time, Edk was a member of the faction that fiercely supported Luna. What do you mean? That's right. My name is Edk, you just didn't remember my name. Edk said weakly, the sadness and helplessness in his eyes multiplying. How heartbreaking it was to be ignored, forgotten, and despised by someone you considered a rival in love. Nian shrugged and said, sorry, I've been sleeping a lot these past 3 years, so I didn't remember it for a while. Your explanation hurts even more. But never mind. Whether you remember me or not is irrelevant. Edok shook his head and looked at Nian. Just be nice to Boss Lorna from now on. Edok clenched his fists. If she's ever been wronged because of you, I'll avenge you no matter what, even if it means losing my life. Nian was stunned. Edok said in a deep voice, I've known this for a long time. She's a domineering boss on the surface, but in reality, she's a kind girl with a strong sense of affection and a strong personality. I'd give my life to protect her. But ever since you showed up, I've realized that I can't protect her or give her the happiness she deserves with my own strength. She's like a dazzling star in the night sky, and we're just grains of sand on the surface. I, and everyone else in the gang, are not worthy of her. Edok smiled helplessly and sighed. Nian knew that everything Edok said came from the heart. He could clearly see the complex emotions within him, annoyance, sadness, relief, and so on. Nian's day stemmed from this very reason. He could sense the subtle emotional fluctuations within Edok. More than that, Nian looked at the other employees in the hallway and could clearly sense their emotions, like the vibrant colors in a painting. This was the permanent ability he had acquired from Lorna. Emotional perception? No. Nian quickly realized that his current ability was more than that. Edok stared at Nian and continued, but you're different from us. You can protect her. Most importantly, the boss likes you. We all know that. Boss, you're almost the same with each of us. You only have feelings for the gang, not the slightest personal connection. It's only with you that you become different. As Edok sighed, a sudden, inexplicable fire of anger ignited within him, and he couldn't help but stomp the floor. Trample. The loud noise drew the attention of many hotel staff. Don't mind. Edok quickly waved his hand and explained to Nian, that kick wasn't meant to be directed at you. Even if I'm jealous of you, I wouldn't be angry at you. I'm just resentful of my own incompetence. Edok himself was bewildered. He'd clearly let it go, but for some reason, he suddenly felt strangely furious, unable to even hold it back. He stomped the floor to vent his anger. But after stomping, the anger inexplicably vanished. Strange. It's okay. Looking at Edok's puzzled face, Nian's expression was a little strange. Try another way. Nian's mind shifted, and he focused slightly on Edok. Just now. Edok had just begun to speak when the corners of his mouth suddenly curled up, and the next second, he burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. I don't know why I want to laugh. Ha ha ha. Anyway, I'm just so happy, I want to laugh. The corners of Edok's mouth twitched wildly, but he couldn't stop laughing so hard that tears were almost flowing, attracting a lot of attention again. Xinian's mind shifted again. The next moment, Edic's mouth curled up, and he cried out, "Wow!" Such a tall man burst into tears, tears and snot flowing together. He couldn't hide his grievance and sadness. I lost my composure. Talk to you next time." Edic covered his face in shame, and after crying, he turned around and stumbled away quickly, leaving behind many confused hotel staff in the corridor. "I see," only Xinian muttered to himself, his eyes bright. Xinian remembered. Lorna did have such an ability, the ability to control her emotions and spirit, to maintain her sanity. This ability, of course, couldn't compare to controlling magnetism. But without this ability, even with the suffering and darkness that Luna had experienced since childhood, she wouldn't have been able to make it to this day. Nor would she have been able to perfectly master the ability to manipulate magnetism with her exceptionally strong heart. But what sets Xinian apart from Luna is that he not only perfectly controls his own emotions, but can also see and even secretly modify the emotions of others. He can manipulate the emotions of himself and others, whether joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness, at will. This ability is even more terrifying than one might imagine, capable of silently changing and influencing the hearts of others. This is the power Xinian gained from Luna. It is also his fifth permanent ability, after the Man of Steel, Spider Sense, Divine Immortality, and the Eye of Death, Emotional Control. Perfect Emotional Control. Chapter 379. The fifth member of the Xinian Alliance. After leaving the five-star hotel, Xinian, using his magical levitation cloak, transformed himself into a disguised outfit and stepped out into the streets of New York. A baseball cap concealed his distinct dark green hair, and he wore a simple white shirt and blue jeans. His sunny, fresh, and youthful face resembled that of a high school student. Xinian made his way through the bustling morning market and soon arrived at a local lakeside park. The early morning sun wasn't glaring, and a light, cool white mist drifted across the lakeside. The park's lush greenery, a vibrant spring scene, was in full bloom. Many people were strolling and meeting. Xinian had wandered there aimlessly. The moment he entered the park, the public security cameras had been unnoticed. In a deserted corner of the New York park, a woman wearing a white sun hat was already sitting. She wore a short-sleeved t-shirt and beige cropped casual pants. Her skinny legs peeked through the cuffs and black canvas shoes. With her head bent over a book, the wide brim of her hat obscured half her face, revealing only her high nose, thin lips, and smooth jawline, reminiscent of a recent college graduate. She crossed her legs slightly, her simple casual clothes barely concealing her flawless figure. A wisp of hair fell past her ear as she bent over her book. Using his spider sense to confirm the surroundings were clear of potential surveillance or danger, Xinian approached without hesitation. "Miss, would you like a date?" Hearing the approaching voice, the woman trembled slightly, her hat brim lifted, revealing a hint of dark blonde hair and a pair of luminous sapphire eyes. Gazing at the young face, identical to 3 years ago, dressed like a high school student, the dark blonde woman's expression drifted into a trance. In that moment, time seemed to warp. "I didn't expect it was really you," Sky said softly, his expression impassive, his face tinged with inexplicable emotion. Xinian knew. This "it's really you" also refers to himself in God King mode, displaying astonishing power in Sokovia. "It's me." Xinian nodded, taking the remaining spot on the park bench next to Sky. After the two sat together, no one spoke. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Xinian yawned, then suddenly reached out and grasped Sky's left hand. It felt soft and smooth. Sky's body trembled immediately, but she didn't struggle. Instead, she asked coldly, "What?" "I want to shake it, isn't it?" Xinian asked lazily, tightening his grip. The hand was slender and flexible when relaxed, and one could imagine how light and nimble it would be when typing on a keyboard. Of course, he also knew that this hand could shatter half a town. Sky hesitated, but didn't break free. If anyone from the Avengers or SHIELD saw this, they would doubt their own eyes. SHIELD's highest-ranking agent, codenamed Shock, now deputy director, a normally cool and stoic woman. Now, even with a young man's hand in hers, she didn't struggle, and her icy face didn't betray a flicker of uneasy expression. "Are you angry?" Xinian turned to look at Sky. Sky glanced at him and said coldly, "No, I'm not. I'm not related to you. Whether you live or die is none of my business." Xinian blinked. If he hadn't been letting his emotions get the better of him, He would have believed it. This girl was clearly filled with joy and a hint of annoyance. Okay, Nian smiled. I've only been up a little over a week. Your status is special, so I haven't been in touch, but I've been using the AI to keep tabs on SHIELD. Congratulations on your promotion to Deputy Director of SHIELD, Sky. What Deputy Director? If I hadn't promised you, I wouldn't want the position. Sky said grumpily, but a hint of amusement curled up the corners of her mouth. Sky froze for a moment, realizing this, and quickly turned away from Nian's gaze. Seeing Nian, resurrected from the dead, Sky was genuinely delighted, but as a professional agent, he concealed this joy well. But just now, his joy had nearly overflowed, showing directly on his face. Seeing him, had he been overly happy? Damn it! Sky felt mortified. Beside him, Nian's eyes lit up slightly. He hadn't expected the fifth permanent ability, emotion control, to be used in this way. Erasing a person's slight frustration and infusing them with joy and happiness. It was a true charm for coaxing women. Of course, Nian didn't want to overuse it on those around him. Emotion control was, in some ways, even more terrifying than the White Queen's telekinetic control. After all, while the other's control was forced, his own was suggestive and imperceptible. Most people would mistakenly believe that their moods and emotions had changed, a sudden change of heart. Who knew someone could manipulate and tamper with them at will? SHIELD was re-established 2 years ago. Nick Fury is still the director, and I'm only serving as deputy director temporarily. Right now, the new SHIELD's primary mission is to combat the remnants of Hydra while identifying and training talented individuals as agents. Sky, now in a better mood and no longer fussy, spoke to Nian about the new SHIELD. Sky rolled her eyes and looked at Nian. Also, SHIELD has been incredibly busy lately with you. Even Captain America and his crew, having violated the treaty, have been forced to bear the label of criminals and remain in hiding, while you've directly confronted the association. I've created a supernatural alliance, Nian said bluntly, the Destiny Alliance. Sky's beautiful eyes were filled with shock, and she asked, "You want to go against the association?" No, Nian shook her head. I've never taken them seriously. The situation was different. From the moment Nian began to consider creating the alliance, he had his sights set on the Sea of Stars, the entire universe, and the future of the world. The Hero Restriction Association, comprised of over 200 nations, has a vision no wider than the surface of Earth. I see, Sky said bluntly, I'll join. As expected of an agent, decisive, Nian praised. I already boarded your pirate ship 3 years ago, so I can't escape. Sky snorted, her cheeks slightly red, and muttered softly. Nian. What does pirate ship mean? However, the fifth member of the Destiny Alliance also appeared, Shockwave Sky. Chapter 380 The Resurrection of Poison Ivy. Here's yours. You'll have free access to our Alliance headquarters. He handed Sky, standing by, an unbound, silver, crown-shaped dimensional ring. He pondered, however, for now, you should maintain your position as Deputy Director of SHIELD. I have no interest in dealing with a council that sets restrictions on heroes, and I don't want the Alliance to be influenced in the slightest by them in the future. He smiled calmly. In that case, I'll find them an opponent. Sky asked curiously, how do you want to do that? Simple, recycle waste. He snapped his fingers and smiled. Next time you encounter Hydra personnel whose identities haven't been revealed, don't report them to SHIELD. Give me the list right away. I can use them. He had no interest in playing cheap tricks like checks and balances, policies, and fallacies with the association. But there were some experts in such matters, masters of their craft. After bidding farewell to Sky, Nian returned to Washington, but he didn't return home immediately. High school. Nian strolled through the campus. Classes hadn't started yet, and many students, backpacks toting their shoulders, were walking around, creating a cheerful atmosphere. Because Nian was so young and dressed like a high school student, the sight of him wasn't surprising. It's still the same here, Nian observed, looking at the unfamiliar faces of the students. Only the campus itself remained the same. He'd been lying there for 3 years. Not only had his classmates, but even his schoolmates, they'd all left. Things had changed. Only the pictures of professors and teachers on the wall offered a glimpse of the past. Nian paused outside his former classroom. He shook his head at the strange yet familiar scene, and was about to leave when he overheard students discussing, "It's been over a week. Where has teacher Felicia Hardy been? She's such a beautiful woman. Could she have been kidnapped by some bad guys? No way. Felicia Hardy?" Nian's mind raced, and memories from 3 years ago flooded back. Was she still teaching here? Was she a full-time teacher now? Nian thought back to his school days. That ball was big, soft, and white, so elastic when he dribbled it. The memory was still fresh, just like the feeling he had yesterday. With that look of disgust and self-control, he was like a noble cat being tamed. Ahem, never mind. Nian dismissed his memories, turned around, and headed for the school gate. Besides school, there was another place nearby he needed to visit. In downtown Washington, a flower shop with a sign saying "Open Now." On the second floor, covered in vines, the room was filled with a blend of natural floral fragrance and the scent of high-end perfume. The TV was on. A woman with dyed hair and pigtails lay on the bed like a child, kicking her feet in fishnet stockings back and forth. Her face was covered in clown makeup, a lollipop in her mouth, and her expression was as if she were laughing maniacally. She was holding a game controller and playing a video game with extraordinary intensity. On the TV screen, the game character she was controlling was firing and killing people non-stop. The sound of gunfire continued, and the bodies of soldiers fell one after another in front of her. Another game character, currently forming a team, was trembling behind cover. "Nanoi, what are you afraid of? Kill them all. Help pick up supplies." Harley Quinn shouted in frustration. "Oh." Nanoi, King Shark, sitting on the floor beside the bed, stared blankly. He responded with a slurred grunt, then, with his large hands barely manipulating the small controller, guided the character from behind cover out. "Hurry up," Harley muttered, turning her head to look toward the headboard. A third figure was visible there. It was a woman in a green dress, with a stunning face and a stunning figure, a voluptuous beauty. In this room entwined with vines, she was the sole protagonist. She had once been the queen of Gotham's crime. What a pity. Harley Quinn's eyes dimmed. The woman in the green dress, breathtakingly beautiful in both appearance and figure, was reclining against the headboard, staring blankly at the beam of light filtering through the vines from the window. There was no light in her eyes. "My sister is like this, it's all because of that bastard." Thinking of this, Harley Quinn shouted indignantly, "Nanoi. The next time I see him, I must eat him. Eat him alive." "How to eat?" Shark King Nanoi raised the controller and looked at her with a silly face. Harley Quinn laughed angrily. But at this moment, tap. A light sound of footsteps came from the store door outside. Poison Ivy and Nanoi trembled at the same time. "What's wrong?" Harley Quinn opened her eyes wide and noticed something unusual. "He's coming," Poison Ivy said calmly. "Who?" Although Harley Quinn asked this, she already knew who it was. Now, who else could make Poison Ivy react besides him? "Chew. Boss Cat is here." Nanoi happily threw away the controller and also smelled the unique smell. "You have no ambition." Harley Quinn slapped Nanoi on the head and said in a low, cold voice, "Later, I'll close the door, and you can eat him in one bite." "Huh?" Nanoi was stunned and shook his head fiercely. "I can't eat Cat Boss. I can't eat Cat Boss." Harley Quinn was furious. "Never mind. If he's gone, it won't work." Harley Quinn could only console herself with this. She already knew that Poison Ivy and that man's fate were linked. Harley Quinn then said to Poison Ivy, "Don't be afraid, Pamela. We'll help you. He won't dare do anything to you." "No need," Poison Ivy shook her head calmly. Nian walked into the flower shop and ascended to the familiar second floor, looking at the vibrant green vines everywhere. Stepping onto the second floor, Nian pushed open the door and met a pair of lifeless beautiful eyes. "Long time no see," Nian said softly. "Long time?" Poison Ivy asked calmly. "Yeah, over a week." Nian shrugged. For both of them, being dead for 3 years and then resurrected again was like skipping 3 years. Wasn't it just over a week since they last saw each other? 3 years ago. Poison Ivy's life was tied to his, so when Nian died, she was buried with him like a dead green ivy. And just over a week ago, Nian was resurrected, and Poison Ivy reversed death once again. After experiencing life and death, they met again. Nian and Poison Ivy just stood there, staring at each other. At this moment, in the bathroom of the room, Nanoi was hiding inside. Due to his huge body, he almost took up the entire bathroom space. So Harley Quinn could only sit on Nanoi's fat, round shark head. Chew. Nanoi instinctively wanted to grind his teeth. SHH. Harley Quinn motioned for him to shut his mouth, leaning forward and lying on the bathroom door, trying to eavesdrop on the conversation outside. Chapter 381 Poison Ivy, Give You a Choice. Washington, D.C., Flower Shop, 2nd floor. Vibrant green vines grew everywhere, covering the walls and draping from the ceiling, giving the room the feel of a pure, natural mountain cave. The noise of the city outside was reduced to a whisper. White light streamed through the gaps in the vines at the window, blurring the figures of the two people standing face to face. Neither Nian nor Poison Ivy spoke, and the room suddenly became utterly silent. They were once enemies, intent on each other's death, but ended up doing the most intimate of things, their fates linked like true master and servant. Although their fates had long been linked, they had come to accept the status quo 3 years ago. However, 3 years ago, Nian and Poison Ivy died simultaneously, and 3 years later, they were resurrected simultaneously. They had experienced the absolute sharing of life and death. This made Nian and Poison Ivy realize even more deeply that they were truly united by destiny. Even if they tried to separate and avoid each other, a thread bound them together in the dark. The feeling was complex, yet pure. In the closed bathroom, Nana Shark stood motionless behind the door, like a human-shaped shark sculpture, only its small eyes occasionally moving, clearly lost in thought. Chew, chew. I want to eat. If only I could eat with Boss Cat. Nana Shark's mind drifted off. Above Nana Shark's head, a petite, sexy woman in twintails sat astride him. Her feet pressed down on Nana Shark's rugged, sturdy shoulders. Her large breasts and flowing twintails leaned forward, revealing a slender, white neck etched with cursed cat claw marks. Her variegated face, adorned with clown makeup, was practically pressed against the wooden bathroom door. The triple venom brand remained, preventing Harley Quinn from direct contact with other creatures. Therefore, the fishnet stockings she wore were actually specially made, fully enclosed stockings, leaving no skin exposed. What are they doing out there? Why are they silent? Harley Quinn frowned, placed her right fingers in her mouth, and nibbled them gently with her small white teeth. Wait? Harley's amber-clear eyes suddenly widened. Why was she hiding and eavesdropping here? Like a rat. Realizing this, Harley practically leaped up. Hiding now meant she was afraid of him. How could I, the Queen of Gotham, be afraid of a mere brat? Harley flew into a rage, ready to throw open the bathroom door and rush out with Nanisha. However, after a moment's hesitation, Harley ultimately held back. Just to give Pamela Poison Ivy some face, Harley muttered, calming down a bit. She wasn't being cowardly. She was lying in wait, watching and listening to what was happening outside. And Harley glanced down at the massive king shark sitting beside her. Normally, this guy was quite formidable, devouring people like small fish and shrimp. Tough and brutal, he was the perfect bodyguard. Yet, he possesses a mysterious loyalty to the cat boss outside. If a fight truly broke out, who knows whether he'd side with him or the cat boss? Thinking of this, Harley Quinn trembled with rage. She'd raised this guy for 3 years in vain. Outside. What? You've returned from the dead, and you don't have anything to say. Nian spoke in a low voice, breaking the silence in the room. I'm dying because of you. Poison Ivy's expressionless face was calm. Don't be so naive as to think you resurrected me. My hatred for you hasn't diminished in the slightest. That's good. Nian breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this, saying casually, if you need a purpose to live, then hate me. A flicker of emotion crossed Poison Ivy's lifeless eyes. I'm here for something. Nian glanced at the double handles on the bed, still untied, then glanced at the closed bathroom. Then he walked over to Poison Ivy. Approaching her, the fresh, natural fragrance grew stronger, dispelling the overpowering perfume in the room. She stood slender and graceful, resembling a forest elf, a vine-like spirit. Her face and figure were flawless, and though her expression was blank, her presence alone exuded a voluptuous aura. I just created a supernatural organization. Do you want to join? Nian stood before Poison Ivy, his face intertwined with hers, gazing at the beam of light filtering through the window. Poison Ivy's lifeless eyes trembled with emotion. Why? Poison Ivy said calmly, why tell me? Why ask me to join? You know I hate and despise you every moment. By asking me to join, aren't you afraid I'll destroy your organization? Of course I know, Nian shrugged. But we share a common destiny. We rise and fall together. You've accepted this, and I should acknowledge it too. You want to use my authority to bring me under your will. A cold glint flashed in Poison Ivy's eyes. No. Nian shook his head and tapped his forehead with a finger. I won't use my powers. It's your choice whether to join or not. Do I still have the right to choose? Poison Ivy lost her composure and sneered. You only need to use your powers and authority, just a thought, and you can get everything from me. Why are you pretending here? Even now, if you want to kill me here, you only need a thought to command. Now that you put it that way, I'm really moved. Nian looked up and down. Poison Ivy's ripe, peach-like figure wrapped in a thin green dress seemed to be eager to try. Poison Ivy's face changed, and a panicked expression appeared on her beautiful face. She was humiliated here alone, but now, there were other people in the bathroom. Poison Ivy's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. If the other party really did that, she might as well commit suicide. Look how scared you are. I thought you really didn't care about anything anymore. But you still like playing with fire. Nian smiled slightly and said, choose, what's your choice? You, really let me choose? Poison Ivy couldn't believe it. Choose quickly. Nian nodded and urged. I refuse. Poison Ivy stared at Nian intently. Okay, I got it. Nian's mouth corners rose, and he turned without hesitation and left directly towards the stairs. Poison Ivy stood there, staring blankly at Nian's back until he disappeared on the stairs. Did he really leave like that? Did he really give her the right to choose? But in the end, why did he smile? From the beginning, he didn't intend to let her join. Poison Ivy's emotions were complicated. She didn't even notice that her dead heart had never been so agitated as it was now. Chapter 382 Pet Harley Quinn, From the Heart. Snap. The bathroom door was flung open by someone inside, and two figures, large and small, stormed out fiercely. Hey, where's he? Harley Quinn opened her eyes wide in shock, staring at the empty room where only Poison Ivy remained. Gone, Poison Ivy replied, her expression far less calm than before, a complex one. Ah, just gone like that? Why didn't you stop him? Let him see how powerful I am. Harley Quinn gestured with a clenched fist and patted the loaded firearm strapped to her waist. Poison Ivy shook her head and said nothing more. For no reason. Poison Ivy felt a pang of regret, regretting that the other party hadn't used their coercive authority to let her make the final decision, instead giving her a choice. Is he starting to play tricks on me? Giving me hope, then sending me into a purgatory of despair. At that moment, Poison Ivy was terrified, fearing she'd actually fallen into his trap. As for Harley Quinn, she would never admit she was afraid of Nian. She simply didn't want to see him, to have a chance encounter with him. It must be that reason. Harley sighed bitterly, recalling the words she had spoken 3 years ago, the last time she encountered Nian. If he could survive, being his pet wouldn't be a problem. Now that Nian was truly resurrected, should she fulfill her promise? However, he had revived her best friend, now an enemy among enemies. That guy is such a jerk. Harley felt unhappy, her lips struggling to lift with arrogance. She had always acted whimsically, disregarding the rules, but one of her life mottos was to follow her heart. Today, precisely because she hadn't followed her heart, Harley felt deeply unhappy. So, why not just be his pet again? It would be over once and for all. Harley was vexed. No one knew. That night, the two Gotham crime queens were restless. The next morning, Harley woke up and brought back breakfast for 10 people, one for herself, one for Poison Ivy, and 8 for Nunavie. After breakfast, Harley habitually turned on the TV, hoping to catch the morning news, preferably a crime story to satisfy her criminal instincts. However, as the screen lit up, a lush, verdant primeval forest appeared before her. That's right. It looked uninhabited, untouched, with all sorts of exotic plants thronging the landscape, vines, and bushes everywhere. The camera was filming from a top-down perspective, about 100 meters above the ground, clearly shot from a helicopter. As the helicopter climbed higher, the camera shifted its angles. It was clear that this primeval forest was boundless, with no end in sight. Lush green stretched as far as the eye could see, like a vast ocean of green. What a huge forest. The Amazon. Harley muttered drily. It might be a huge forest, but what was there to see? No, that's not the Amazon. Poison Ivy, leaning back in bed as usual, slowly opened her beautiful eyes, her pupils reflecting the forest on the TV screen. There were so many exotic plants, even she didn't recognize them. As you can see, this is the Sahara Desert. Yes, I repeat, this is the heart of the Sahara Desert. The female reporter on the news marveled. Overnight, the desert has been filled with a variety of plants, thriving with life. The world's largest desert has been transformed into the world's largest forest pan. Not only that. The news screen jumped, satellite photos showed endless forest vistas. Besides the Sahara, there's also the Arabian Desert, the Libyan Desert, and the Australian Desert, the world's 4 largest deserts, all transformed into pristine forests overnight. This is a blessing not only for us humans, but also for all life on Earth. It's a true gift from the gods. The female reporter was thrilled. Poison Ivy's eyes sparkled. She knew what this transformation meant. Transforming the desert into an oasis, that had been her dream. And how could it have happened overnight? It must have been him, Harley Quinn quickly realized. How else could it be such a coincidence? That guy had just arrived yesterday, and this drastic change happened that same night. How did he do it? Harley was stunned. Overnight, he practically overturned the vast landscape of the earth, transforming a desert sea into a forest paradise. It was the might of a creator god. No, the point wasn't how he did it, but that he did it. Pamela. Harley looked at Poison Ivy. She knew all too well how much plants meant to her sister. Back when they were a crime team in Gotham, Poison Ivy didn't want money or jewelry, only rare plants and plant genes. And the 4 forest seas were a dreamlike gift, too powerful for any woman to resist. Harley was truly worried that Poison Ivy's heart had been seduced. I'm fine, Poison Ivy responded calmly. Unlike Harley's fears, Poison Ivy wasn't overjoyed, but rather deeply terrified. Poison Ivy found she could no longer maintain her composure, and she no longer yearned for the end of her life. Instead, she was filled with hope and anticipation. She felt her heart being controlled, in a non-coercive way. Future Chronicles headquarters, inside the top floor office. Isn't this a nice view? Nian stared at the virtual projection, which was broadcasting news reports from various locations about the emergence of giant forests. This was naturally achieved using the geological transformation machine he had developed at Future Chronicle headquarters. This technology, also of alien origin, could transform portions of a planet's geology into a habitable environment. Of course, if he knew what Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn were thinking, Nian would definitely say they were overthinking it. He wasn't trying to curry favor with Poison Ivy, nor was he trying to manipulate her. 3 years ago, when their final death was imminent, Nian had promised Poison Ivy that if he had the chance, he would make amends. This was his compensation. To Nian, it was a simple matter, not something to resort to elaborate tactics. It was his heart's desire, and he did it. As for whether Poison Ivy joined the alliance, Nian didn't care at all. He was simply giving her a chance to choose because of their relationship. The 6th member of the alliance, Nian muttered to himself. After a moment's thought, he subconsciously gave the order, Alice, prepare a suit for me, one with a deep dive mode. No one in the deserted office responded. Oh, right, Alice is all ready. Nian's eyes dimmed, and he turned to look at a corner of the main hall, where there was a lifelike metal statue. The metal girl seemed to be looking at him, but unfortunately her metal eyes were dull. He stepped forward and gently stroked the cold head of the girl's statue. Nian changed his words and said, Shirley, prepare a set of battle clothes for me, I want to go to the sea. Chapter 383 The Crystal Palace of the Sea Queen. A mysterious blue mist swirled and surged. A figure clad in dark metal armor emerged. Confirming the area was sealed by an oxygen mask, Nian removed his nano-armor. The dark armor receded from him like the tide. Nian took a deep breath and could smell a faint fragrance. He looked around, and what came into view was a magnificent and exquisite crystal palace. Pink curtains, resembling coral reefs, cascaded from the palace's ceiling. Through the curtains, doors, and windows, he could see the vast expanse of the ocean floor. No matter how many times Nian had come here, he couldn't help but marvel. Such a civilized structure, nestled beneath the sea, and tens of thousands of meters deep. Here, it's not much different from before. Nian surveyed the familiar interior and furnishings of the Crystal Palace. The air was specially created to be plentiful, and the faint fragrance of the resident hostess lingered. Inside, separated by a thin layer of pink curtains, a bed, Pink, yet even more translucent than pink, sat like a dreamy pink jellyfish. It looked so soft and comfortable. In fact, it was even softer and more comfortable than it looked. After all, Nian had slept there 3 years ago. He extended his spider sense and, realizing the crystal palace was currently empty, he parted the curtains and entered the room. Beside the dreamy pink jellyfish bed, a golden trident over 2 meters long stood, exuding an air of nobility and regal grandeur. Constantly, the trident glowed with a faint golden light, radiating divine power and might, forming circles of golden ripples that spread outward infinitely. The moment Nian stepped into the crystal palace room, the trident trembled slightly, as if triggering defensive mode, radiating a powerful wave of golden light. Like a shock wave, the golden light surged forward, charging straight at Nian's face. Nian didn't react, simply continuing his forward steps. Just before the artifact's golden light descended upon Nian, even the magic levitation cloak assumed a protective stance. The golden trident seemed to finally recognize the intruder. The golden light suddenly dissipated, like a golden gust of wind, blowing the boy's black hair. Nian waved his cloak, neutralizing the oncoming gust of wind. The pink curtains within the crystal palace swayed. "Hi, long time no see," Nian said, waving at the trident artifact beside the bed. The golden trident hummed softly, then dimmed, losing its divine glow and becoming like an ordinary weapon. This signified submission. "Your master hasn't returned yet. I'll wait for her here for a while," Nian said, sitting down unceremoniously on the bed. The dream jellyfish bed was incredibly springy, and even just sitting down gave it a slight bounce a dozen times. The mattress, softer than down, hugged and supported his body. That guy really knows how to enjoy himself, Nian thought. Outside the crystal palace, a figure dressed in the uniform of an undersea empire maid emerged, approaching from afar. Is this the legendary Imperial Crystal Palace? The young underwater dweller, Maya, suddenly stopped in the water. She gazed ahead at the crystal palace, nestled deep within the royal residence, her expression filled with excitement. This was the most heavily guarded and inviolable place in the Atlantean Empire. Since the crystal palace was moved from the former kingdom of Zabel, no creature, save that one person, had ever entered. "This is where the Empress resides," Maya muttered excitedly. Speaking of the Empress, her expression was filled with fanaticism, and admiration. Empress Mara, in this underwater world, was a living legend and myth. 3 years ago, Princess Mara of the Kingdom of Zabel obtained the Divine Trident, earned the title of Sea Goddess, unified the 7 underwater kingdoms, and ascended to the throne of Empress. Now, 3 years later, under the boundless radiance of the Sea Empress, the Undersea Empire grew ever stronger. Just as they had been 10,000 years ago, the 7 underwater kingdoms have once again become an inseparable whole, coalescing into a powerful new empire of our time, the Atlantis Empire. Now, all the underwater inhabitants sincerely believe that the Empress will lead Atlantis to a new pinnacle, towards a glorious future. Meanwhile, for 3 years, no one except the Empress has set foot in the Crystal Palace. Not even the guards or maids have been allowed in. This was naturally the Empress's order. However, after 3 years, the Crystal Palace needed extensive care and cleaning. So, recently, the Empress finally relented and allowed a maid to temporarily enter the Crystal Palace. This position had countless talented young women in Atlantis vying for attention. Ultimately, Maya, a resident of the former kingdom of Zabel, received this honorary position. "I will be the second person to enter the Crystal Palace since the founding of the new empire." Thinking of this, Maya trembled with excitement, her heart pounding. Just being able to set foot in the Empress's residence, even as a maid, was enough to make the entire empire envious. Maya calmed herself before continuing to swim forward, soon arriving in front of the Crystal Palace. With a pop, Maya passed through the Crystal Palace, shielded by an oxygen mask. Living in a place with abundant oxygen, like on land, was a must for an emperor's maid. Surviving without water, without armor, required a certain level of royal blood in the sea. How beautiful! Maya's eyes sparkled. Dressed in a dress, she entered the Crystal Palace. As a maid, it was natural to familiarize herself with its interior layout. Up ahead, that should be the Empress's chambers. Maya paused near the Crystal Palace's chambers, separated by a layer of pink curtains. She couldn't move forward. Even a glimpse through the curtains felt disrespectful to the Empress. "Let's wait for the Empress to return and get her permission." Maya was about to turn and leave when she froze. What was that just now? Wasn't the Empress in the palace's main hall? Maya's eyes suddenly widened, and she instinctively took a few steps, entering the heart of the Crystal Palace. When she finally took in the scene in the Empress's chambers, her eyes glazed over, her young face filled with disbelief. She stood there like a statue beneath the sea. A dark-haired young man, wearing a land-world-style trench coat, boots still on, lay half reclining on the dreamy jellyfish bed in the Empress's chambers. His eyes closed, he breathed evenly, seemingly asleep. In that instant, the maid, Maya, felt everything crumble, her eyes reddening. How dare he? Blasphemy. This is the greatest blasphemy against the Atlantean Empire. I'm leaving my hometown, so updates will be slower. I'll resume tomorrow. Chapter 384 Reunion with Empress Mara. As if awakened by footsteps, Nian awoke from his bed, his sleepy eyes opening. How dare you? Maid Maya trembled all over, her pupils dilated, her soul trembling with rage. But then, the golden trident, standing beside the bed, once again shone with the golden light and terrifying might. A surge of immense force surged outward, pressing down upon Maya, the underwater being who had entered the bedroom. Plop. Maya fell to her knees, feeling the unbearable weight of life and body bearing down on her frail frame. Her bones cracked, nearly shattered. Why? Why was the Atlantean Empire's supreme artifact, the trident, not driving away the land dwellers, but driving her away instead? Maya couldn't understand, couldn't comprehend. Under the dazzling light of the golden trident, Maya felt like a salted fish, scorched by the sun's glare. Zio-san, stop. The black-haired young man sitting on the bed said. In an instant, the golden trident's radiance and power faded, returning to its dim state. Huff, huff. Maya knelt on the ground, panting heavily. She couldn't understand how the other party had made the trident obey her. Who are you? Maya gasped. Nian didn't respond. He had already sat up in bed, his gaze no longer fixed on Maya, but behind her. Nian smiled faintly. You're finally back. The maid, Maya, was startled. She turned her head slightly to the right and saw a figure in a gorgeous pink gown shuffling forward. Tall, radiant feet clad in crystal slippers stepped majestically into the bedroom. Your Highness. Maya knelt down, her head lowered in a gesture of utter submission. That's right. The one who had arrived was the master of the Crystal Palace, the current master of Atlantis, the true ruler of this underwater world. Empress Mara. Yes. The Empress nodded gently. She was dressed in a gorgeous jellyfish-like gown, her red hair tied high and tucked in, revealing her fair chin and neck. Her beautiful, delicate face was calm and composed, and the dress enveloped her graceful figure, radiating a noble and regal aura. Your Highness, she said, this person of unknown origin has intruded into the Crystal Palace at some point. I will notify the guards. Without waiting for Maya to finish her report, the Empress spoke with authority, her lips softly parted. Get out. Huh? Maya was bewildered. Your expulsion is not right. The Empress was clearly addressing Maya, her beautiful eyes never moving away from the young man before her. Maya was stunned. Wasn't this person being expelled the right one? Yes. Although confused, she quickly stood up at the Empress's command and stumbled out of the palace. Guard the Crystal Palace gates and don't let anyone in. The Empress's command continued from behind. Yes, Your Highness. Maya ran even faster, her gaunt figure quickly disappearing into the Crystal Palace. After she left, Nian opened his arms and smiled. Mara, long time no see. You're truly back. The Empress, so dignified and calm just a moment ago, now had a resentful, misty gaze in her beautiful eyes. Like a little girl, she took eager steps, her skirt fluttering as she slammed into Nian's arms, throwing him onto the jellyfish bed. Maid Maya stood outside the Crystal Palace, glancing back inside, her composure slightly calmed by the icy water. That person, could it be? How could it be? Maya was startled by her own audacious thought. That was the Empress. 2 years ago. The former nobles of several former underwater kingdoms had used various means and channels to force the Empress into marriage, hoping to put pressure on her and thereby weaken her control over the empire. The result? Empress Mara, holding the trident, strung together the bodies of several undersea nobles who had been plotting against her, and hung them in front of the palace for a month. Her decisive and domineering approach shook the world of the seas and 7 kingdoms. From then on, No royal noble dared to propose a marriage alliance with Empress Mara. The Empress's prestige in the underwater world reached a peak. That's right. 3 years ago, as soon as His Highness ascended to the throne, he immediately amended the laws of the underwater world, allowing for normal intermarriage between underwater people and land dwellers. Maya opened her eyes wide in surprise, feeling that everything was connected. No way. Maya dared to guarantee that if today's events were to get out, it would be like a prehistoric earthquake in the underwater world. She couldn't imagine the consequences. What's wrong? Even without me, you've still made it, becoming a true queen of the sea. Nian lay in bed, helplessly watching the red-haired Mara, her slender, snow-white arms wrapped around his back, her exquisitely perfect face buried in his chest. She was dressed in a beautiful, elegant pink dress. Her mature, graceful figure was slightly larger than his, almost completely crushing him. Mara hugged Nian tightly, as if afraid everything was a dream. She whispered with deep resentment, "All this time, I felt increasingly lonely. Without anyone to talk to as an equal, so many things have lost their meaning." After becoming the supreme queen of the underwater world, Mara felt even more isolated and lonely. No one could continue to walk alongside her, everyone in the underwater world could only submit to her. "Thank goodness, you're back now," Mara's voice trembled. After becoming queen, though so many things had lost their original meaning, the existence of one person still held the same significance as before. "Nian, you won't run away again this time, will you?" Empress Mara raised her eyes, a resentment seeping out like tangible seawater, enveloping Nian. "Well, I'll still return to the land. But dying like I did 3 years ago shouldn't happen again," Nian said, his hands gently resting on the shoulders exposed by Mara's long dress. "Not should. It's definitely, certainly, and certain." Mara's head jerked up, staring directly at Nian, who was pinned beneath her body, her beautiful eyes radiating authority. "I promise, okay." Nian shrugged, then said, "Are you okay just now? This bed was so comfortable, I fell asleep while sitting here, and she happened to see me." "It's okay, she wouldn't dare tell anyone." Mara replied calmly, her gaze no longer imposing, but captivating, her beautiful eyes, her face flushed a faint blush even more alluring than her dress. She smiled gently, opened her lips slightly, and said meaningfully, "Besides, this bed wasn't originally yours. Nian. How can this be tolerated? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385, I Was Willing 3 years ago, Emperor Pillow. 10,000 meters beneath the sea, in the crystal palace of the Atlantean Empire, a gentle breeze from an unknown source blew the pink curtains, and beams filtered through the seawater outside fell upon the chamber, transforming the scene into hazy haze. On the dreamlike jellyfish bed, Nian and Mara remained silent, face to face, close together, each able to hear the other's heartbeat and breathing, feel each other's warmth and presence. Their eyes met. Nian could sense the blazing heat in her eyes, far greater than his own, carrying 3 years of accumulated emptiness and longing. Then, Nian's body suddenly stiffened. It was the current Empress of Atlantis, who was holding him down. Without warning, she spread her slender legs, slightly raised her knees, and ascended along her thigh muscles. Through the soft jellyfish dress, the astonishing softness and smoothness could be clearly felt. The hem of the dress rose higher and higher with the movement of her legs. Her feet, untouched by the sun, were as white as pearls opened from a shell. How could this be tolerated? Nian gasped, gripping her shoulders firmly. He couldn't help but warn, "Mara, you're playing with fire." "Really?" Mara withdrew her snow-white arms from her embrace, gently resting one hand on Nian's chest while reaching up with the other to untie her hair. With a slight sway of her head, her red hair cascaded down, drifting like soft grass in the sea. A few strands fell over Nian's nose, their delicate fragrance tickling him. Nian suddenly felt like throwing a tantrum. "I, the princess of the Undersea Kingdom, don't play with fire. But I'm an expert at water, a gift of my race." Mara blinked her beautiful eyes, delicately correcting him with a mixture of tenderness and pride. In front of Nian, Mara never claimed the overly lofty and heavy status of an emperor. Instead, she drew on her former princess background to reveal the tenderness beneath the hard armor and mask of an emperor. Just like this crystal palace. That was Empress Mara, a warm and tender heart never revealed to the public. Are you ready? Perhaps ready to pay any price. Nian's breathing quickened slightly, yet he remained restrained as he reminded her. I do. Empress Mara placed her hands on Nian's chest, staring directly into his eyes. Without hesitation, she spoke with conviction. 3 years ago, I did. Yes, 3 years ago, she did. This crystal palace, the Atlantis Empire, the current Empress of the Sea, I offer you everything. I only ask that you pass by here just once more. A day passed. Outside the crystal palace, Maid Maya stood in the water, her head bowed, eyes closed, like a dead fish floating in the water. Maya, Maya. A faint voice called out to her. Maya jolted awake. Her eyes met with a middle-aged man in a black submarine uniform. A middle-aged man with slicked back hair and a square face swam closer, his hands clasped behind his back. Military advisor. Maya's eyes widened in surprise, sleep instantly gone, and she hurriedly bowed to him. Why are you standing here alone? Where's Her Majesty the Empress? I haven't seen her in the main hall of the Senate today. Vico curiously glanced at the crystal palace behind Maya. Her Majesty the Empress. Maya was startled at first, then, as if remembering something, a cold sweat immediately broke out. She'd actually been standing guard outside the crystal palace all day. Her Majesty the Empress hadn't emerged. This undoubtedly meant that the Empress and a landman had been inside the crystal palace all day. Maya's maid paled. What happened? Vico, a military advisor to several generations of Atlantean emperors, immediately noticed something was wrong with Maya and asked in a stern voice. Maya was on the verge of revealing what happened yesterday, but she changed the subject, frantically waving her hands. Nothing. Yesterday, I didn't do something right, and Her Majesty the Empress punished me by making me stand outside the crystal palace for a day. This explanation perfectly matched Maya's own panic. Vico's expression softened slightly. Well, you've only been here a day. As the second person to enter the crystal palace, it's normal to make mistakes. Her Majesty the Empress making you stand means she recognizes you and chooses to keep you here. Yes, advisor. Maya nodded hurriedly. She hadn't expected the advisor to comfort her. If Advisor Vico knew that someone else had already entered the crystal palace when she did, a young land dweller, how would he feel? He waved his hand, urging, go in and ask Her Majesty the Empress why she hasn't come to the council hall so late. Is she feeling unwell? I'll be there. Maya nodded, turning and swimming towards the crystal palace's outer oxygen mask. With his hands clasped behind his back, Vico watched Maya's figure disappear into the murky waters, making no attempt to follow. Even as a military advisor, he dared not enter the Empress's crystal palace. Inside the crystal palace, light and water intertwined, creating a hazy, ethereal illusion. The dreamy jellyfish bed was a bit disheveled. Off to the side, Mara had already donned a new set of imperial armor. Her upper body resembled golden fish scales, while her lower body wore green leather pants. Her graceful figure shimmered with the golden light, evoking a sense of nobility. Her waist-length red hair, still untied, cascaded lazily around her shoulders and waist. Mara, the supreme and inviolable emperor of Atlantis, gently crouched down, straightening the human boy's clothes, as if she were a handmaiden, smoothing them down until there was not a single wrinkle. That's all right, Mara said softly, rising and smoothing the collar of Nian's shirt again with her hands. Compared to yesterday's gown, Mara, clad in her imperial armor, was even more stunning, yet possessed a certain allure. A woman's allure. A hint of maturity. Nian glanced at the bed beside her, which looked like a jellyfish soaked in water. He had to admit, Mara was indeed quite adept at playing with the water. After all, her power lay in her ability to control it. What are you thinking about? Mara's cheeks flushed slightly. Thinking about 3 years ago, when I merged with you as a symbiote. Nian smiled and teased, you were right. From a certain angle from behind, you look even more beautiful. Still saying. Mara's stunningly white face flushed, and her fists limply struck Nian. Back then, their bodies merged, their minds coexisting, their minds imagining countless futures. Who could have imagined that one day, all of those things would become reality? Clearly, this was the most beautiful and precious thing. Chapter 386 The Sixth Permanent Ability. Right. Inside the Crystal Palace, Nian, donning his magical levitation cloak, suddenly remembered something important. He tapped his forehead with a finger, but didn't sense any abilities similar to those Poison Ivy had before. He looked at Mara and asked, "Mara, have you sensed anything unusual about yourself, like your abilities?" Abilities? Mara blinked in confusion. She immediately waved her hand, and the one-stamped jellyfish bed instantly shed countless water droplets, condensing into a single water sphere in the air. With a flick of her finger, the sphere soared out of the crystal palace like a missile. Nothing unusual. Mara shook her head. She'd been able to do this before, and the strength of her abilities hadn't changed. Besides her unique ability to control water, Mara's other racial abilities, such as underwater breathing and high-speed water travel, were no different from those of other sea royals. Wait. And there's another special ability. Mara suddenly had a thought. And at that moment, from outside the palace, the sound of a young girl's footsteps echoed, accompanied by a distant, awestruck greeting, "Your Majesty." "Don't come in," Mara instinctively whispered. The next moment, before the maid Maya could react, her body reacted. Step. Maya suddenly froze in place within the crystal palace, her foot held raised in the forward-moving position, unable to move. Huh? Maya didn't know what was happening to her, only that her body couldn't move forward. It was a resignation from deep within her blood. This is. Inside the palace, Nian and Mara exchanged a surprised glance. So this is it. Mara glanced at the trident artifact standing nearby, a flash of realization in her beautiful eyes. 3 years ago, when she mastered the trident, Mara awakened her ancient bloodline, gaining the ability to control the lesser creatures of the sea. And now, this control over the various species of the sea has apparently been passed on to the underwater people. This is a significant difference from before. After all, no matter how much control was exerted over races before, it was limited to the fish and shrimp of low intelligence, as well as the trench tribe that had degenerated into sea monsters. But now, it was extended to the people of the seabed. This meant that Mara would truly reign as the queen of the underwater world. If she so desired, no one could disobey her. This is too unthinkable. Nian knew that from now on, Mara's reign as empress would be unstoppable. She would become the truly unique king of the underwater world. A king second only to one man. Wait a minute. Nian realized that since Mara's abilities had been enhanced, based on past experience, he should have gained new abilities as well. Thinking of this, Nian closed his eyes, his mind immediately calmed under the control of his emotions, and he carefully perceived everything. Soon, Nian seemed to see the genes of each biological race unfolding in his mind, the colorful history of evolution and development, the regions across the globe. His mind was able to connect with these races. Fish, shrimp, turtles, shellfish in the ocean, the low IQ sea creatures. Isn't this Mara's emperor ability before she was enhanced? The ability to command and control the lower creatures of the ocean. No. Nian's body trembled. Besides the marine creatures, he could also sense the cats, dogs, leopards, and elephants on land, the birds and insects flying in the sky. Nian could sense the presence of all the lower species inhabiting this blue planet, and he could connect with these vast and diverse races through his mind. Nian dared to guarantee that he could summon the local lower animal tribes at any time with just a thought. Is this an enhanced Tarzan ability? King of the animals? Nian didn't know how to evaluate it. For now, let's call it Imperial Domain. It is also Nian's sixth permanent ability, following the Man of Steel, Spider Sense, Divine Immortality, Death Eye, and Emotional Control. Nian looked at Mara, remembering that she had always wanted him to be emperor. Nian vaguely understood why he had awakened such an ability. Mara, this is for you. Nian fished out a silver crown-shaped ring from the inner pocket of his windbreaker, transformed from his magic levitation cloak. What is this? Mara blushed. Even as a sea dweller, she knew what rings represented on land. Up there, I founded an alliance called Destiny, Nian explained. With this dimensional ring, members can teleport to the Destiny Alliance headquarters at any time. Since Mara was his friend, she was also a member of the alliance. She was the sixth member of the Destiny Alliance. First ring, Nian Prince. Second ring, Wonder Woman Diana Prince. Third ring, Spider-Woman Gwen Stacy. Fourth ring, Sky the Shockwave. Fifth ring, Lorna the North Star. And now, the sixth ring, Mara the Queen of the Sea. With this, I can see you more often. Mara happily put the dimensional ring on her finger. That's right. Nian scratched his head. Not only will he be seen, there's a high probability that he'll see some other people as well. Given the current scale and form, who knows what will happen to the headquarters of the Destiny Alliance in the future. I hope it won't be too bad. Nian felt guilty for no reason. Leaving the underwater world and returning to Washington. Nian had originally planned to have lunch at home and then go to Los Angeles to try to recruit the 7th member of the Destiny Alliance. The result? Nian just returned home and found that Aunt Diana and Maid Wanda were sitting on the sofa in the living room. The atmosphere was a little strange. Who made you angry? Nian asked curiously. Master, take a look at this. The artificial intelligence surely took over the TV and projected the living room in a virtual way. It can be seen that it was the focus report of today's New York news. Wakanda's new king, T'Challa, publicly supported the hero restriction agreement at the New York diplomatic office and strongly condemned the silver-haired goddess's arrogant disregard for the rule of law. If the silver-haired goddess continues her reckless behavior, Wakanda will impose sanctions on her. It is said that Wakanda's former king, T'Challa's father, was one of the heads of state who signed and promoted the hero restriction agreement. This move by Wakanda's new king, T'Challa, is clearly a last-ditch effort to protect his father before his death. Wakanda's new king, T'Challa, stated that individual heroism is unacceptable. Only through unity can Earth remain safe from attack. Oh. Nian looked at the young, eloquent Black King before the camera. Wakanda? Nian had some impression. 3 years ago, when he entered supersonic mode, he had sensed the existence of this mysterious nation. On the surface, it was a small, impoverished indigenous nation, but in reality, it was Earth's second extraordinary nation, hidden outside the Atlantis Empire. And they suddenly appeared? Nian smiled. Chapter 387, Sword pointed at Wakanda. The Hero Limitation Agreement. Ever since the last confrontation in the Washington courtroom with the silver-haired goddess, the prestige of this agreement, signed by over 200 nations, has undoubtedly plummeted. If this continues, this so-called first superhero agreement for superheroes will exist in name only. This will also represent the supremacy of the superheroes, a power that even the combined might of nations cannot contain and control. Now, Wakanda has stepped forward, undoubtedly defending the Hero Limitation Agreement and attempting to restore a balance between the superheroes and the nations. Nian's expression was amused. He had grasped the meaning of Wakanda's new king, T'Challa. Superheroes and the nations of the world all want a better world. Why not sit down at the negotiating table and jointly confront the alien forces and the various challenges of the future? There's no need to continue to provoke civil unrest on Earth, or for one side to dominate the other. Nian simply chuckled. Did the superheroes want to sit down at the negotiating table and have a good discussion in the first place? What a shame. The authority represented by over 200 nations, believing themselves to represent the will of the Earth, didn't believe the heroes had any right to sit at the negotiating table. Ever since they signed the Hero Restriction Agreement without consulting the heroes, they'd only wanted to control the heroes. Initially, things were going smoothly, with the Avengers merely splitting in two. Then, a silver-haired goddess emerged, playing by her own rules, and slapped them in the face. Finding themselves powerless, they considered returning to the so-called negotiating table. Nian, what are you going to do? Diana, sitting on the living room sofa, raised her eyes, gazing at Nian with a serious yet calm gaze. The Destiny Alliance was led by a single figure, Nian Prince. Therefore, Diana would now be the one to make her next move based on Nian's decision. Nian also knew that he wasn't just an ordinary high school student pondering and judging things as before. He was the leader of the Destiny Alliance, the Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj, the boss of Future Chronicles, and a human being born on Earth today. This was the stance Nian would take from now on. Nian's eyes flickered. Whatever Wakanda's new king, T'Challa's motives, perhaps it was to honor his father's legacy in promoting the agreement, or perhaps to maintain the prosperity of Wakanda, he was clearly on the side of the agreement. Recalling his earlier remarks to the media, Nian couldn't help but smile. What a selfless king, dedicated to the welfare of the world. If Wakanda were truly just a poor, small nation, that would be fine. But Wakanda itself was Earth's second largest hidden supernatural power, thanks to its vast vibranium mines, a technological advancement hundreds of years ahead of the rest of the world. While leveraging this rich resource to develop and enter the supernatural realm, it continued to use the label of a poor, small nation to spearhead the development of agreements restricting supernatural heroes. This made Nian feel deeply uncomfortable. Nian dared to admit that he had been selfish from the beginning, yet this had saved the world more than 3 times. Wakanda has always claimed to be selfless, arguing that the world and the supernatural should help each other. Yet, they've exploited vibranium to prosper, yet haven't seen any so-called contributions to the world. Even Nian dared to guarantee it. If Wakanda didn't rely on vibranium and supernatural technology, how could it dare to make such a show at this moment? While secretly enjoying the benefits of supernatural power, without contributing to the world, they've simultaneously enacted agreements and regulations restricting outside supernatural heroes. Letting Wakanda be the good guy is a prime example of double standards. At that moment, Nian knew what he was going to do. Upon hearing his aunt's question, Nian's gaze was sharp as he said calmly, "Wakanda wants to represent a small, impoverished nation, right? Let it remain a small, impoverished nation." He was actually rather envious of Wakanda's vast vibranium reserves. The Destiny Alliance was just getting started, and if they had a sufficient supply of vibranium, the Alliance's foundation would be essentially complete. Just when he was thinking there was no chance, the other party took the initiative. That same day at noon, Washington, D.C., was sunny and bright. The bustling city streets were bustling with traffic, and the world was as peaceful as ever. Julia, a reporter for a prominent local newspaper in Washington, had her day off today, and had just met up with a few close friends for a stroll down a pedestrian street. Despite carrying numerous shopping bags, Julia was still preoccupied with work. Every industry was becoming increasingly competitive these days, and if she didn't have any news or valuable information to report, she'd sooner or later be passed over by her colleagues. But then, a number of people on the street exclaimed in surprise. Julia was puzzled when she heard a friend next to her exclaim, "Julia, look up." She instinctively looked up, and her pupils suddenly constricted. Hundreds of meters above Washington's pedestrian street, a figure radiating a divine, resplendent light, like a human-shaped comet, or perhaps a modern-day deity, streaked across the city sky at an incredible speed. Oh my God! It's him! He actually showed up at this very moment. Everyone in Washington who witnessed this scene stared up at the sight, their faces filled with disbelief. Surprises, cheers, whistles, shouts. For a moment, the entire pedestrian street was abuzz. "It's the Silver God," Julia muttered to herself, her mouth wide open in disbelief. Lately, if there's one person in the world who's the most popular, it's one person, or rather, one god. The world's attention is focused on the silver-haired goddess. She saved a small city with her mighty power and descended upon the Washington courthouse with such force. She has become a faith for some, the most remarkable superhero of the moment. It's said that Superman soared through the sky and changed the world, but the silver-haired goddess soared through the sky and began to overturn it. As the silver-haired goddess's gender identity has become increasingly ambiguous, many have adopted the term silver god instead. Julia looked up at the sky shock. The radiant figure wasn't streaking horizontally across the sky, but was instead descending diagonally. That direction, is it the Washington courthouse? Realizing this, Julia shuddered, threw her shopping bags to a nearby friend, and bolted towards the courthouse. The silver god had chosen to appear the day after his Wakanda speech, and to go to the courthouse's previous location. What did this signify? Julia knew exactly. Big news, news that would surely shock the world. Julia even removed her high heels and ran barefoot to the courthouse square. The spacious square was already packed with people, including court security and lawyers, all with their eyes fixed on one point, tisk. The moment the figure with silver hair, a blurred face, and a holy light emanating from its body landed in front of the courthouse, the crowded square fell silent. From today onwards, the silver god declared without preamble, his voice neutral yet magnetic, "I officially declare war on Wakanda." Chapter 388, Crazy. Declaring war on a country alone. The silver god, in his personal capacity, officially declared an all-out war against the nation of Wakanda. It was a blast. A bombshell. Upon hearing this declaration of war, everyone's brains were buzzing. The Washington courthouse square was the first to explode. And when these words spread throughout Washington by word of mouth, Washington exploded. Then, when these words, without even a single accompanying image, were broadcast directly across the United States in the form of scrolling text, the entire country exploded. Finally, When the silver god, like a god, stood at the doorway of the courthouse and issued a public declaration of war, the news spread at breakneck speed throughout the world. The whole world went into an uproar. The moment everyone saw this news, their minds went blank. First, disbelief, then a ton of shock. Wow? Seriously? One man officially declaring war on an entire nation? This was unprecedented in human history. Not only were people around the world shocked, but even some powerful organizations were stunned. At this moment, in the highest level of the new SYNOPSIS council chamber, a holographic figure, a suited, white man with ringed temples, was projected onto a chair. One of the highest-ranking members of the council behind SYNOPSIS, his entire body trembled slightly. Declaring war on a nation in her own name? How dare she? The other projected members exclaimed angrily, "This is absurd, outrageous. She wants to poke the sky apart? What good will that do her?" Most of the members remained silent. Then, the only non-projected, real person in the council chamber, the tall, black man and director of SYNOPSIS, Nick Fury, spoke calmly, "That's the silver god. What's there to be afraid of?" Nick Fury glanced at the counselors with his single eye. "Are you still treating her as a special individual? She can single-handedly save a nation, and naturally, she can also destroy one. She possesses power equal to that of a nation, even far exceeding it. How can she not declare war?" At Nick Fury's words, all the counselors fell silent. They were well aware of this. In reality, they weren't questioning Silver God's strength, they were more in disbelief. They thought Wakanda's statement would drag the other side back to the negotiating table. Instead, not only did the other side not even concede, but they declared war. This was unacceptable to all the higher-ups. A superhero, shouldn't they compromise? No matter how powerful she was just one individual on Earth. How could she be so overbearing? How dare she go to war with Wakanda alone when she was at odds with over 200 countries simultaneously? How dare she? They couldn't understand. Meanwhile, in Wakanda, news of Silver God's public declaration of war on Wakanda somehow leaked into the closed nation of Wakanda. The nation erupted in outrage, and the people were enraged. Many of them had thought it was fine to just stay safe and avoid invading the outside world. Now, someone, and only one person at that, was declaring war on their country. Kill, kill, kill. Fight, we must fight. Let that so-called silver god see the might of our Wakanda. The technologically advanced yet barbaric land of Wakanda roared like a black panther. Meanwhile, beneath the thick night, the Wakanda palace shone brightly. A pristine yet transcendental grandeur, its smooth walls and floors shimmering against the dark glow of a unique metal. The entire palace was constructed entirely of vibranium. Indeed, the material in Captain America's shield alone is enough to buy an average military base. It's the hardest metal on Earth, bar none. Even in the universe, it's a rare strategic resource. Now, within the vibranium-clad throne of the Wakanda Palace, the new King T'Challa, wearing a leopard tooth necklace and a stern expression on his dark, handsome face, sat sternly on the vibranium throne. Inside the palace's meeting hall sat 5 or 6 black nobles, each dressed in a different style. They represented a distinct lineage of Wakanda's nobility. At the entrance to the hall, a royal guard, composed of strong, tall black women, wielding sharp vibranium spears, stood guard at the door. The atmosphere in the hall was heavy and oppressive, a sense of impending storm. "Prince T'Challa, oh, no, King T'Challa," a female noble said. "You've only just ascended to the throne, and you've already provoked such a being into our Wakanda. Is that inappropriate?" "I didn't provoke him. I was simply expressing my opinion," Black Panther T'Challa replied gravely. Another male noble said, "I know. You support the final promotion agreement your father made with the outside world during his reign." "Yes," T'Challa nodded. "I don't think my father was wrong, and I don't think I was wrong either." A belligerent noble also said, "Since they've challenged us, there's no reason to back down. Other nations fear the so-called silver god, but we're Wakanda. Everyone, listen to me." T'Challa clenched his fist and said, "Since they're so strong and unreasonable, there's no need for us to be polite. This is also an opportunity for Wakanda. A chance to publicly showcase our nation's technology and strength to the outside world." These words moved every noble present. Nian wanted to make an example of Wakanda. T'Challa also wanted to use Nian as a springboard to usher in a better future for Wakanda. Now, who is right or wrong no longer mattered. What mattered was, this battle was inevitable. The outcome of this battle would change the entire future of the world. The new headquarters of the Avengers. Really? You've made this decision. I understand. Tony Stark put down his phone, a complicated expression on his face. Tony, what's wrong? Pepper Potts, clad only in a sexy tank top, stepped forward, a look of worry on her face. The higher-ups at SHIELD, after consulting with the high-level councils of various nations, have reached a single consensus. Tony Stark sighed softly. They won't allow Wakanda to lose. Wakanda, after all, is on one side of the agreement, meaning it's an alliance of over 200 nations. So, even if Wakanda is a small, impoverished nation, they will not allow it to fall to the Silver God. Otherwise, the Transcendents will officially surpass the nations. So, they want the Avengers to intervene. Pepper Potts looked puzzled. On the one hand, they want to sanction the Transcendents, and on the other, they rely on them. How could this be possible? Well, they want the Avengers to persuade both sides to avoid an actual war, Tony Stark said. And if it does, Wakanda must win. Tony, what do you think? Pepper asked worriedly. My take. Tony Stark's mouth twitched. I want to stay home and watch it through holographic projection. He felt that the higher-ups were taking things for granted and knew the Silver God's strength better than anyone else. Was he a being they could defeat? Chapter 389, American Comics debut in Wakanda. It was the third day since the Silver God declared war on Wakanda. Nearing noon, in southern Africa, the local weather was as hot as ever. The brilliant sunlight seemed to stream down, bathing the pristine plains, dense forests, and uninhabited mountains and rivers. Locals, grazing on horseback, could be vaguely seen on the grasslands, along with herds of wild animals. This represented one of the poorest and most pristine regions on Earth. Buzz, a modern fighter jet, emblazoned with the Avengers logo, descended and landed steadily on a moderate hill. A strong wind blew up a cloud of dust. The jet's hatch opened, just touching the hilltop. A sleek-haired, suit-and-tie gentleman in his 30s, wearing sunglasses, emerged, followed by a white man in a short-sleeved shirt and cropped trousers. The man was not tall, carrying a backpack, and looked like a high school student on his way to school. Mr. Stark, where is this? Peter Parker looked around in confusion. Wakanda, Tony Stark replied bluntly. Wakanda. Peter Parker's eyes widened. Is this the Wakanda I know? The same Wakanda that so forcefully responded to the Silver God's declaration of war yesterday at noon. Tony Stark nodded. Oh my God. It's here. Peter Parker was stunned. The confrontation between the Silver God and Wakanda has been the subject of intense online and social discussion worldwide in recent days. 3 days ago, Wakanda publicly supported the agreement, challenging the Silver God's transcendental supremacy. The next day, the Silver God appeared at the Washington courthouse and declared war on Wakanda. And yesterday, Wakanda announced that it accepted the Silver God's declaration of war and would welcome him. It's safe to say that events are escalating at a rocket-like pace. And because the Silver God remains elusive, Wakanda is now the focus of the world's attention. Many people are finally beginning to understand that there is an African nation called Wakanda on Earth. A country of indigenous tribes, dominated by farmers and with almost no trace of modern civilization. How could such a small country challenge the Silver God? Many people were confused. Yes, among the people of various countries, the support for the Silver God is very high, which is exactly the opposite of the attitude of the top leaders of major countries. Of course, the more than 200 countries that have made the agreement now feel that Wakanda is very weak. They are eager to invest a large amount of military funds in Wakanda, stuffing guns, missiles, tanks, and fighter jets, and it would be best if each country stationed an elite force. If possible, they might even bring a few nuclear bombs to support the situation. However, what surprised them was that Wakanda did not accept any gifts or support from the outside world, and even said that it could resolve this war crisis on its own. Where does Wakanda's confidence come from? No one in the outside world can figure it out. Don't be fooled by the apparent naturalness here. Tony Stark looked down at the plains and forests and shrugged. Right now, there are over 100 satellites above Wakanda, from various countries, observing what's going on here. No way. Peter Parker glanced up at the azure sky, then, as if realizing something, hurriedly grabbed his backpack and ran back to the fighter. A moment later, Spider-Man, wearing a tight-fitting red and blue suit made of special fabric, emerged from the fighter's cabin. Mr. Stark, what are we doing here? Spider-Man asked curiously. Given that guy's temperament, if he really wants to conquer Wakanda, he won't wait too long, Tony Stark whispered. Spider-Man shuddered. You mean? That's right. If there's a real fight, it'll be today. Tony Stark was certain, and felt a sense of impending storm. Spider-Man was completely stunned. So, are we here to join the war? To help Wakanda, or the Silver God? Let's wait and see. Tony Stark exhaled slowly. Ever since Dr. Banner's disappearance during the Battle of Sokovia, they were the only two permanent members of the Avengers. Trying to persuade the Silver God proved difficult. However, Tony Stark also wanted to see where Wakanda got such confidence from. Noon. Wakanda, on the vibranium-clad Black Panther Square at the palace entrance. The young Black King stood in the center of the square, flanked by nobles, female guardsmen, and a large number of local soldiers in indigenous attire. Your Majesty. 128 satellites have been detected scanning our sky. Numerous foreign forces have also been entering Wakanda from outside the borders. However, due to the camouflage, our true capital has not been exposed, the technical team led by the Wakanda princess reported promptly. Wakanda's new king, T'Challa, spoke calmly and forcefully, remove Wakanda's camouflage. Brother, what are you talking about? Princess Shuri of Wakanda was stunned. For decades, Wakanda's camouflage had remained intact. It was the nation's first and most important defense, shielding it from outside observation and knowledge. Remove the camouflage, T'Challa said seriously. Wakanda, from today on, there is no need to hide any longer. You said so. Princess Shuri gritted her teeth and began to operate the projection screen on her arm. She activated a series of restrictive commands. With a press of the final virtual warning button, the Wakanda sky suddenly shattered. What is that? At this moment, representatives from various forces around the world, including Iron Man and Spider-Man from the Avengers, were on the edge of Wakanda's pristine natural landscape. They all raised their eyes in unison, looking in order. They could see a vast expanse of pristine forests and mountains, originally located in the center of Wakanda. The natural landscape suddenly distorted and shifted, then faded like a veil of colored light, revealing its true form beneath the veil. Everyone outside, including the central base stations of long-distance satellites from various nations, stared wide-eyed in astonishment. A hyper-modern city nestled in the wilderness came into view, towering above any city outside. Luxurious metal buildings hundreds of meters high rose from the ground, with numerous suspended train tracks suspended overhead. The sunlight shone a dazzling glint of technology against the metal and glass. A giant Black Panther statue crouched majestically beside the city. A palace constructed of special metal, like a sharpened sword, soared into the boundless blue sky. Disc-shaped super fighters patrolled the city, and the natives donned vibranium and electro-pulse equipment. This was the true face of Wakanda. Oh my god, this is Wakanda. Isn't it the most prosperous city on Earth? The level of technology seems to be completely superior to anything outside. Super fighter jets, super hover trains. I thought I was facing an alien civilization. Seeing Wakanda without its camouflage, everyone looked incredulous. The original primitive desolation had transformed into something extraordinary and developed. Inside Wakanda, the new king, T'Challa, opened his arms, his eyes blazing. Wakanda has officially debuted. Do you dare to come? Declarer of War. Chapter 390 Nian vs. Wakanda. The moment Wakanda officially unveiled itself to the outside world, the camouflage that had enveloped the capital for years was removed. The high-ranking officials of various countries, who had originally planned to pack military supplies and troops for a show of strength, were completely stunned. Isn't that me, the clown? Look at the super spaceships, high-end trains, metal resources, and so on. These super spaceships, high-end trains, metal resources, and so on. The air of advanced technology and the aura of the wealthy is overwhelming. So, this is where Wakanda's confidence comes from. Inside Wakanda, Tony Stark stood on a hill in the wilderness, gazing up at the dreamlike, developed city not far away, his eyes lit up with understanding. Just looking at the technological equipment available for civilian use, the local technological level is even higher than the alien army that previously attacked New York. I wouldn't say they're 100 or 2 centuries ahead of the rest of Earth, but they're certainly decades ahead. Clearly, In some areas, their technology surpasses even that of the current Avengers. This country is teeming with extraordinary talent. No wonder they dared to confront the Silver God, who had demonstrated his astonishing power in the Battle of Sokovia. We can win. Such a powerful and advanced nation of extraordinary technology, maybe we can win. Some high-ranking officials from other powers exclaimed excitedly in the background. A nearby high-ranking official warned, even if we win, it'll be Wakanda's victory. From now on, they'll be directly suppressing us. The official's excitement immediately waned, but he continued, being suppressed by a superpower is like being suppressed by a single individual. Then, they began to worry. Previously, they worried that the Silver God would actually descend and sweep Wakanda aside. Now, they worried that the Silver God wouldn't accept Wakanda's challenge. In front of the Wakanda palace. I'm not afraid of you coming, I'm afraid of you not coming. T'Challa, adorned with a leopard tooth necklace, was full of confidence. He seized this opportunity to make his Wakanda debut and suppress the transcendental supremacist Silver God. Wakanda would usher in a glorious future. Wakanda has appeared, do you dare to fight? The new King T'Challa and his fully armed soldiers waited, awaiting the arrival of the outsider declaring war. Time edged towards noon, the sun nearing its zenith. However, there was still no sign of the so-called declarant's invasion, only an increasing number of people from various countries flocking to the area. A Wakandan noble said solemnly, Your Majesty, there's only one enemy. Is it possible they've already infiltrated Wakanda? I believe they wouldn't resort to such tactics. T'Challa shook his head. From the enemy's direct approach to the courthouse to his subsequent declaration of war, it was clear he was incredibly arrogant. If he comes, he'll definitely attack head-on. Before the new king finished speaking, T'Challa felt a sudden burning sensation in his temples. This ominous premonition was. The Wakandan princess next to him suddenly exclaimed, Brother, look up. What? King T'Challa and the others in the palace square instinctively looked up. They saw a second sun appear in the sky above Wakanda. No, that sun was much smaller, but it was steadily growing larger, a striking crimson piercing the azure sky. The Wakanda princess's left arm smart device beeped. A meteorite is detected about to hit the Wakanda capital. The meteorite has a radius of approximately 220 meters and will impact the capital's surface in 10 seconds. The Wakandans' minds went blank. What a coincidence. A meteorite is coming. It's coming. T'Challa growled, quickly activate the energy shield, maximum level. At this moment, above Wakanda, a gray rock meteorite, coming from outer space, broke through the Earth's atmosphere and continued to fall with a humming sound. A figure stood firmly on the roaring meteorite, wearing silver nano-armor, and her waist-length silver-white hair fluttered with light. Finally, I've revealed my true identity. Is it okay for me to give a greeting? Nian muttered to himself as he looked down at the approaching capital, removing his nominal helmet. However, this greeting was a bit too much. Falling to a height of about 1,000 meters, Nian stepped on the meteorite beneath him and immediately leaped upward, while the detached meteorite continued to fall. Greeting gift, catch it. A 400 to 500 meter meteorite continued to fall, accelerating, casting a vast shadow over Wakanda. It was like the wrath and judgment of a supreme god, imbued with terrifying impact and destructive power. Every person on the surface could sense the aura of death within Wakanda. Is this something a human can do? Spider-Man's mouth dropped open at the sight, his heart nearly pounding. That's why many call him a god. Tony Stark, though reluctant, could not doubt his opponent's strength. He had witnessed firsthand how he withstood the fall of an entire city during the Battle of Sokovia. If he could catch a whole city, then a mere meteorite wouldn't be too much, right? Tony Stark gently patted Spider-Man's shoulder and said solemnly, This is the pinnacle of our world's supernatural realm. Boom. A meteorite, 400 or 500 meters tall, plummeted with terrifying force. Before it even reached the surface of Wakanda's capital, it struck a blue energy shield about 500 meters above the city. This massive energy shield enveloped the entire city. The massive gray meteorite collided with the immense energy shield, instantly unleashing a hurricane and dust storm for over 10 kilometers. The meteorite shattered and exploded against the shield, which erupted in a blinding light, unleashing a violent energy surge. The shockwave crushed the shattered meteorite. The meteorite melted away like a snowball encountering a red-hot iron block, sizzling away. Wakanda's energy shield had actually stopped the meteorite. And it showed no signs of weakening. This indirectly indicated it could handle at least a dozen more meteorites like this. Just as the outside world marveled at Wakanda's defenses, cheers erupted from within the Wakanda capital. With a swish, the power shield that had withstood the meteorite's impact was suddenly ripped open, a 10-meter-long gash in its roof. A silver figure burst in like a god. Silver hair, starry eyes, and a blurred face, its form obscured by a white beam connecting the sky. Clad in silver-white nano-armor and wielding the Greek sword of Vulcan, Nian, in perfect God King mode, burst through the shield and burst in. That's right, the God King mode, a perfect balance of powers. A trinity of demigod physique, magnetic field control, and spider genes. Since this power mode had been the instigator of the conflict, and the current mode had been the one declaring the war, Nian naturally intended to use it to put an end to it. Yes, to put an end to Earth's civil war. Witnessing Nian's entrance in God King mode, the new king, T'Challa, instantly activated his suit, transforming into vibranium-clad, humanoid Black Panther. Wakanda will win. Black Panther roared, and the entire nation of Wakanda was mobilized. Countless voices rang out, Wakanda will win. One God, one country, the war is about to begin! Exclamation mark. Chapter 391 God King Nian vs. Wakanda. Wakanda will win. A frenzied roar erupted across Wakanda. The Black Panther King, his female guards, indigenous soldiers, fighter planes and spaceships, even the Princess of Wakanda, each adorned with high-tech equipment, rushed towards the soul-invading enemy, the Silver God. Nian, in perfect God King mode, wielding the Vulcan sword, descended from the Wakanda capital like a white meteor. He was met first by 4 or 5 disc-shaped super fighters. These fighters maneuvered with incredible agility, effortlessly dodging tall buildings like hawks. From hundreds of meters away, the super fighters, positioned in various positions, instantly zeroed in on Nian in the air, firing electromagnetic energy cannons at breakneck speed. Destructive beams of deep blue energy shot into the sky. Nian's falling form abruptly stopped, unnoticed, mid-air, barely avoiding several predicted electromagnetic beams. His exposed cheeks felt an intense heat. If it weren't for his God King mode physique, even a mere scratch would have been enough to vaporize his flesh and blood. Before Nian could catch his breath, more than a dozen electromagnetic beams blasted down from all directions, aiming to strike him down. Buzz! The engines of Nian's nano-armor activated, rapidly moving left and right, up and down, dodging the majority of the beams once again. His spider senses clearly detected another beam, blocking his position and making it impossible to avoid. Nian simply gave up dodging. A dark ring on his left hand illuminated, and an ancient round shield appeared. He swung it across his left arm, raising it forward. Bang! The electromagnetic beam slammed into the shield, which instantly shone with golden ripples, absorbing the entire electromagnetic wave. Nian casually threw the Vulcan sword forward. It vanished in front of him in an instant, reappearing 100 meters away on the engine of a super fighter jet. With a humming sound, the fighter jet plummeted down, carrying the Vulcan sword embedded in it. How is this possible? The Wakanda princess looked up, her eyes wide with shock. All of Wakanda's current super fighters were personally modified by her. A layer of vibranium coating was applied to the fuselage. Although the coating was extremely thin, ordinary missiles could not penetrate the defense. Now, it was destroyed by a sword? 4 more. In God King mode, Nian stood 100 meters above Wakanda, sensing the other fighters around him. His dimension ring once again glowed with a faint light. His dimension ring continuously devoured the metaverse, retrieving the object stored within. Nian used the dimension ring a second time. An exquisite golden sword appeared out of thin air before him. Nian grasped Odin's sword in his right hand and swung it upwards, unleashing a rainbow beam. The rainbow beam engulfed a burst of electromagnetic light, enveloping the fighter that launched it. With a whoosh, the fighter vanished from the sky above Wakanda. This is much more convenient. Nian's eyes gleamed, his right hand holding the sword never stopping, repeatedly slashing down the rainbow bridge, aided by Odin's sword. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The slashed rainbow bridge slashed away, wiping out the incoming super fighters. Not even a shred of wreckage remained. Soon, only God King Nian stood alone above Wakanda. Then, as if sensing something, Nian raised his round shield to his side. A black beastly shadow streaked across the sky, scratching fiercely at the shield with a clanging sound, sending dazzling sparks flying. The shadow then descended onto a nearby tall building. What did you do to them? Black Panther crouched on the building's outer wall, staring intently at Nian, who stood in the air. Nothing, just sent them to a quieter place. God King Nian pointed upward. Meanwhile, beyond Earth, on the moon, several Wakandan super fighters landed in a chaotic pattern on a crater. Nian had originally considered sending it to the Divine Realm or Nova, but decided against it. After all, the greater the distance, the greater the loss of divine power with each strike. Especially with something as large as a fighter plane. Ignoring the enraged Black Panther, Nian slung Odin's sword from his waist and descended into the capital. Trampling. When Nian had finally landed on the vibranium-clad square in front of the Wakanda capital, kill. Thousands of female guards, armed with the vibranium spears, and caped native soldiers rushed forward. The shouts and roar of the charge were deafening. God King Nian lifted his right foot and stomped it down. Boom. The vibranium floor didn't crack, but the air exploded, and a surge of divine power formed a shockwave that swept outward. The first batch of native soldiers who rushed forward were all thrown to the ground. Shield. The remaining native soldiers reacted with remarkable speed, raising their cloaks. The cloaks transformed into electromagnetic walls, blocking the incoming shockwaves. Throw spears. The female guard captain shouted, and a dozen strong, nimble female guardsmen, stepping on their shields, leaped up and hurled their spears forward with all their might. Swish, swish, swish. The spears slashed like giant arrows. Dozens of piercing sounds echoed from all around, their spears aimed at the surrounding enemies. Too slow. God King Nian shook his head. His spider sense allowed him to perceive his surroundings in incredible detail. The fusion of his demigod and spider physiques allowed his God King mode to react many times faster than a human. To God King Nian, even bullets were incredibly slow, too slow to hide him. And these thrown spears, even if they were as fast as bullets, were so slow that his trajectory was clearly visible. God King Nian seemed to be standing still, constantly twisting and turning his body, his movements so fast they were almost indistinct. All the dozen or so spears he threw missed. At the same moment, a tall black female figure leaped in front of Nian, clutching a vibranium spear tightly in her hand. It was Okoye, the captain of the Wakanda Kingdom's female guards. She was second only to King Black Panther in terms of combat power. Just now, Okoye had directed the guards to hurl their spears, but instead of throwing her own weapon, she took the opportunity to close in on Nian. Nian instinctively tried to dodge, but suddenly realized that a dozen or so vibranium spears were pinned to the vibranium floor, forming a small cage that trapped him. I see, Nian suddenly realized. This was the enemy's true attack method. Intruder, die! Okoye cried out in a cold, furious cry. Tall and powerful, she ran at the limit of human speed. As she approached Nian, the muscles in her right arm bulged, and the vibranium spear she grasped thrust forward. The vibranium spear instantly pierced the air, piercing Nian's throat, where he was not wearing silver armor. Even with the protection of the nano armor, Okoye was confident that the vibranium spear could deliver a fatal blow. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392 Invincible, Desperate Wakanda. Huh? Okoye was stunned. His vibranium spear, a fatal strike, had landed just in front of the opponent's throat. Two fingers firmly gripped the sharp tip of the vibranium spear. No matter how hard Okoye strained, the spear couldn't move even a fraction further. So fast. No, is this the kind of strength a human can possess? Okoye used both hands to try to pull back, but he couldn't recapture the vibranium spear. Nian shook his head, appearing incredibly relaxed as he caught the opponent's spear with two fingers. That would be a fatal blow for others, even for many superheroes and villains. But for Nian, now in God King mode, there were more than 10 ways to counter it. This was the disparity in strength. A frog in a well, Nian muttered to himself. With a flick of his finger, the vibranium spear flew backward with a buzzing sound, carrying Okoye, who held it with both hands, dozens of meters away. Nian looked around, seeing the native soldiers arriving in electromagnetic cloaks and his personal guards wielding vibranium spears. He felt a strange sense of disappointment. Was this all Wakanda was? Rather than fighting a high-tech, transcendental nation, It felt more like battling a group of primitive people armed with diamond bullet BB guns and golden kitchen knives. God King Nian suddenly felt this war was utterly dull. In Wakanda. So that's how it is. A country that has rapidly developed thanks to the vast local vibranium resources. Tony Stark brought Spider-Man to the edge of Wakanda's capital. Using long-range satellites and reconnaissance aircraft to observe the battle, they quickly deciphered the core secret of Wakanda's rise. After all, vibranium artifacts were everywhere. This vibranium has made Wakanda prosperous and empowered its strategic strength. What a shame. Tony Stark sighed with deep regret. Mr. Stark, what's a shame? Spider-Man was puzzled. He believed that with so much vibranium supporting them, Wakanda might actually win. That was vibranium. Captain America had relied on the legendary shield made of vibranium to win countless victories in World War II. Alice, Wakanda, which rose to prominence on vibranium, has to face him. Though the war had only just begun, Tony Stark couldn't bear to watch any longer. He said helplessly, Wakanda is doomed. Not even God can save it. In the square in front of the Wakanda Palace, Nian, shrouded in a blazing white divine light, stood in the center. Okoye, pale, struggled to his feet with the support of his vibranium spear. More and more local soldiers gathered in this direction, and the sky buzzed with the sound of a dozen super fighters. The sky and the ground of Wakanda were densely packed with them, surrounding Nian. Satellites from all over the world were focused on this battlefield. Snap! King Black Panther leaped down beside Okoye, his hands clasped with vibranium claws. It's time to end it. Nian nodded, agreeing, yes, this farce should be over. Since it's boring, let's get it over with. Everyone. Black Panther was about to give the order when Nian, standing in front of him, suddenly sheathed his round shield and slowly raised his empty hands. His hands, shimmering with white light, suddenly shone with a strange green glow, and an eerie power emanated from them. Buzz! The vibranium spears planted in the ground beside Nian trembled first, and then, as the astonished Wakandans watched, more than a dozen vibranium spears detached from the floor and floated in midair. And more. Before anyone could react, the vibranium swords of the indigenous soldiers, the vibranium spears of the female guards, the technological equipment of the special forces, every vibranium or metal weapon and equipment detached from their owners and floated in the air. Ah! The Wakanda princess screamed. The technological devices mounted on her arms, the electromagnetic cannons made of vibranium components, also broke free and flew into the sky. Over the Wakanda sky, the dozen or so super fighters that had been converging on that direction simultaneously lost control, flipping over and forming a neat, uniform formation above Nian's head. What is this? Every Wakandan's mind went blank. In less than a second, their weapons were gone. How could they even fight? Control of vibranium? No, the ability to control metal on a large scale. As Wakanda's most brilliant genius, the Wakanda princess immediately realized this, and her astonishment was even greater. They had never participated in Sokovia, so they didn't know that one of the main abilities of the perfect God King mode was metal control. And everything in Wakanda, weapons, equipment, even clothing, was built on vibranium. That's right. Polaris Lorna's ability was Wakanda's absolute nemesis. God King Nian had originally intended to hide his ability, to see if Wakanda had any tricks up its sleeve, but sensing Wakanda's lack of interest, he decided to deal with it quickly. He laid his cards on the table, no more pretense. God King Nian pressed his hands downward. Suddenly, floating in the air, vibranium swords, spears, and other weapons formed a battle array, their tips aimed at the people in the square. Over a dozen super fighters adjusted their electromagnetic cannons, their muzzles trained on the Wakandan soldiers. The golden sword of Odin and the silver sword of Vulcan hung horizontally and vertically behind Nian. A golden lasso emerged from the air like a dragon, extending infinitely, shimmering with golden light, encircling the thousands of Wakandans in the square. Who is encircling whom? Do you want to continue fighting? God King Nian asked. Silence fell. Silence fell over the Wakanda Palace Square. Everyone on the Wakandan side felt a chill as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Despair. They felt a deep sense of despair. One moment, they had believed that the combined might of Wakanda could win, but the next, the enemy had overwhelmed them beyond a point of no return. King Black Panther took a step forward. As his Black Panther nano-vibranium armor faded, the young king's sturdy and towering features were revealed, though his face was now paler than ever. T'Challa removed the wolf tooth necklace from his neck and tossed it to the ground. He knew full well that the other party had only needed to think to send him, clad in the Black Panther suit, soaring into the air. Perhaps he had been wrong after all? A moment's pause. T'Challa, unarmed, took another step forward. "Brother!" The Wakanda princess Shuri couldn't help but call out. T'Challa, acting as if he hadn't heard, took a few steps forward and stood in front of Nian. T'Challa turned, glancing at the guards and soldiers, then at the vibranium weapons and spaceships in the sky. Finally, he spoke bitterly, "We, Wakanda." But then, clang! A golden red iron figure, carrying Spider-Man in one hand, descended from the sky into the center of the square, not far from Nian and T'Challa. "Oh, reinforcements." Nian glanced at the two. No, I have no intention of joining the fight." Iron Man put Spider-Man down and waved his hand hastily. He said calmly to Nian, "Can you please give me a favor and end this war?" "What do you think?" Nian asked calmly. "Never mind," Iron Man shrugged, unconcerned. He knew it was impossible to stop the other side at the last step. He was just making a statement, which he could use to explain to SHIELD and the higher-ups later. If they couldn't win, what else could they do? Chapter 393, Shocking Change, The Death of the New King? In the Wakanda capital, in the square before the palace, Nian's increasingly intensified magnetic force instantly controlled the already determined battle situation. The faces of the Wakandans, from the king to the common people, were grimacing. They deeply felt a disparity in strength between them, a chasm that seemed insurmountable. Iron Man and Spider-Man appeared, but it was just a formality, with no intention of joining the war. It was pointless. Tony Stark knew that even if the Avengers joined the battle, it would only slow down the enemy's attack. The power displayed by the Silver God was simply unstoppable. On the battlefield, Spider-Man stared blankly at the God King's Nian, his eyes reddened by the white divine light, but he didn't look away. This feeling, so familiar. Even though his aura was extremely intimidating to others, Peter Parker felt it was very gentle, and he felt an inexplicable sense of security. It seemed as if he had felt it before. "Mr. Magneto?" Spider-Man Peter Parker asked in doubt. The Silver God's blazing eyes, gleaming with golden divine flames, glanced at him and said indifferently, "This isn't the place for you." "Ah, sorry." Spider-Man immediately lowered his head in reflection, like a child who had done something wrong, feeling both surprised and delighted at the same time. The Silver God was actually the Magneto he'd once met. Inside the nano-armored helmet, Tony Stark's eyes were solemn. He'd suspected something, and now it was confirmed. The Silver God's identity wasn't a female initially rumored, but actually a male. A silver-haired male god, right? However, his gender wasn't important now. After all, so many people were constantly deifying him. What mattered was that he had single-handedly won this extraordinary war. Furthermore, what surprised Tony Stark was that he seemed to be taking some care of Peter Parker. Was he trying to steal him? Tony Stark grew wary. The Avengers were almost completely defied. Carrying two divine swords, one gold and one silver, God King Nian's entire body glowed with white light, as if ablaze with searing flames. His majestic, noble golden eyes gazed at T'Challa, King of Wakanda. "Is it time to announce the outcome?" "Many are still waiting." With the last part, God King Nian raised his gaze, as if with a hint of purpose, to the sky filled with smoke. Meanwhile, high-ranking officials from over 100 countries, watching the battle unfold via real-time satellite observation, slumped in their command chairs behind them, almost exhausted. Like Wakanda, they felt a profound sense of powerlessness at this moment. Below the transcendent, we are all ants. Even among transcendents, there are different levels. And the Silver God undoubtedly stood at the pinnacle of the current Earth, akin to God. Even Wakanda, with its vast vibranium resources and civilian technology far surpassing the cutting edge of major powers, was defeated so completely. How could they possibly compete? Nuclear weapons? The question was. Nuclear weapons are inconvenient to use, and if they fail to kill the enemy, the entire nation will suffer. They suddenly realized that the power represented by the Silver God alone possessed a deterrent far exceeding that of nuclear weapons. Now, they had to bow down. From now on, all nations in this world would bow to one man. Suddenly, they missed Superman. Perhaps Superman could stand up to the enemy. If Superman were here, At least the enemy wouldn't dare to act so arrogantly, right? Alice. Under the gaze of countless people in the Wakanda Palace Square, the new King T'Challa sighed softly, his lips tinged with bitterness as he spoke. We, the nation of Wakanda, hereby declare. Puff. Suddenly, a piercing sound echoed throughout the arena. The new King T'Challa's words stopped abruptly. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and he looked down in confusion. A pitch-black claw burst out from the chest of the new King of Wakanda. The claw resembled a woman's hand, yet also a black cheetah's. The fur on its surface was formless, insubstantial, like blazing black flames. This sudden and horrifying scene stunned everyone on the field. Neither Wakanda nor the Avengers, not even Nian, had anticipated such a turn of events. A sizzling sound. Blood splattered everywhere. The pitch-black claw ripped free from T'Challa's pierced back, sending him sprawling onto the smooth vibranium floor, a stream of sticky blood quickly staining the ground crimson. The fur blazed like black flames, and the dark tail swung upward. Near T'Challa's back, an unknown presence had suddenly appeared. It resembled a black panther in a nano-vibranium suit, but with towering breasts. Its figure was tall, slender. It lacked the smooth, sleek texture of a vibranium suit, instead resembling a true humanoid black panther. And it was a female. What a swift speed. God King Nian narrowed his eyes slightly. The lasso of truth that had just encircled the square, and his exquisite spider sense, had almost simultaneously detected an anomaly. In that instant, he, and only he, on the field, had reacted to the opponent's attack. Therefore, no one else on the field could have dodged this blow. If this sneak attack had come from Iron Man or Spider-Man, they would have suffered the same fate as T'Challa. The humanoid female panther raised her bloodied right paw, licking the blood with her crimson tongue. The blood on her hand immediately merged with her body, forming a blood-red crescent between her brows. Her body burned with black, ethereal flames, and an aura of savagery and evil permeated her. Brother! Princess Shuri screamed, looking at T'Challa lying in a pool of blood. Damn it! How dare you hurt His Majesty? Guard Captain Okoye, regardless of his own injuries, seized the only remaining vibranium spear that hadn't been displaced by the magnetic field, and charged at the female panther with rage in his eyes. The humanoid female panther didn't even turn her head, standing still. Suddenly, her jet-black tail twitched. Boom! A powerful gust of wind ripped through Okoye's body, sending him flying backwards with his vibranium spear, slamming into the Wakandan army behind him. He knocked over a dozen native soldiers to the ground, flying dozens of meters before coming to rest, lying motionless in the square, his life or death uncertain. Kill! Over a dozen Wakandan soldiers, wielding non-metallic blades and clad in electromagnetic cloaks, charged forward. The humanoid female panther suddenly twisted her slender waist, her right claw gleaming with cold light, ripping through the air, ripping the surrounding air into several vortexes. A crash. The electromagnetic shield of the cloak, along with the Wakandan soldier's arm, was ripped into several pieces by the claw. Over a dozen Wakandan soldiers fell to the ground, screaming in agony. What on earth was that being? Fear permeated the hearts of every Wakanda. Only a few elderly Wakandan nobles, upon seeing the humanoid female panther, revealed expressions of disbelief and tremblingly knelt on the vibranium square. Panther Goddess. Chapter 394 Black Panther Goddess, the two gods meet. Wakanda's totem is the Black Panther. This is a well-known fact throughout the nation, with a massive statue of the Black Panther standing beside the royal palace. However, there is a core secret of the nation, known only to a select few nobles. Wakanda has its own deity, the Black Panther Goddess. This is a secret passed down from ancient times. Legend has it that from the very beginning of Wakanda's founding, the Black Panther Goddess served as the deity of the first Black Panther King. She is also the source of the Black Panther's extraordinary strength and physique, endowing successive Wakanda kings with the extraordinary power of the Black Panthers. However, that was merely a legend passed down long ago. But today, a being strikingly similar to the guardian deity of Wakanda legend has appeared in person. Stop! Stop! An elderly Wakandan nobleman shouted at the Wakandan army, who were about to attack, and scrambled through the crowd. You're being disrespectful. You're being disrespectful. Goddess Black Panther, she's our local deity, she must be performing miracles to protect us. The elderly Wakandan noble was overcome with emotion, his dark face flushing faintly. He knelt in submission before the humanoid female panther. To him, The noble Wakandan nobles and the king of Wakanda were merely followers of the Black Panther goddess. Compared to them, they were as lowly as dust. Therefore, the new king's murder must be due to his inadequacy. Wakanda's patron saint, Iron Man and Spider-Man, who were about to intervene, paused. Goddess Black Panther, you have finally risen again, and you still favor us Wakanda. The elderly Wakandan noble burst into tears. The Panther goddess's eyes flashed with a faint, cyan flame as she gazed at the kneeling Wakandan noble beside her. Her jet-black tail lashed out again, so fast it was impossible to discern its trajectory, leaving a blurry afterimage of lightning. Snap! The Wakandan noble, unarmored, was cleaved in two from head to toe by the tail's tail. The tail lashed directly onto the vibranium floor, leaving a startling trail of blood-red tail marks. Deathly silence. The Wakanda Palace Square was utterly silent. Old Patriarch. Then, some of the Wakandans screamed and wailed again. They called this a guardian. Tony Stark was horrified. The enemy was so fast that even his nanosect scans made it impossible for him to stop them. Mr. Stark, Mr. Magneto, be careful. Peter Parker's face paled beneath his spider mask. His hair stood on end, his spider genes frantically warning of danger. King, Captain, Chief. In the Vibranium Square, the remaining Wakandan nobles and soldiers were filled with grief and indignation. Monster, fight this monster! Princess Shuri shouted, and the other unarmed Wakandans echoed with red eyes. Let's go! Iron Man quickly spoke to Spider-Man beside him. He knew that if this continued, the unarmed Wakandans would likely be slaughtered by this so-called native god. Okay. Spider-Man gritted his teeth and agreed. Buzz! Iron Man quickly raised his two engines, and components detached from the back of his suit, hovering beside his arms and forming a large laser turret. Powerful laser beams converged within it. But just as Iron Man indicated his intention to attack, the Black Panther goddess inexplicably vanished from her position. Where did she go? Tony Stark was stunned. The electronic eyes of his nanosuit rapidly scanned the area in front of him, but there was no sign of her. Mr. Stark, watch your back. Spider-Man's voice rang out urgently. Before Tony Stark could even finish his words, a dark figure with a tail appeared behind him. The next moment, Iron Man and the shattered fragments of his nanosuit were hurled hundreds of meters across the square. Swoosh! Two webs laced with electricity landed behind Iron Man, but completely missed. The other party had actually managed to dodge after attacking Iron Man. Peter Parker was horrified. This was the first time he had ever encountered such a terrifying being. Such speed reminded him of the Black Kitten he encountered as a child, Black Flash. Stunned, Peter Parker turned his head, as if electrocuted, to look behind him. A sinister black beast appeared, almost teleporting. His spider sense barely registered, but at this distance, he was too far away to defend himself. If I had known, I would have listened to Mr. Magneto and gone to school. Spider-Man Peter Parker thought desperately. It was a critical moment. Snap! A claw blazing with ethereal black flame stopped just short of Spider-Man's head, its sharp claws nearly tearing Peter Parker's spider suit apart. Spider-Man's heart skipped a beat, and the eye mask on his spider suit widened in unison. A massive hand, blazing with white divine flames, firmly grasped the humanoid female panther's wrist, forcing the Black Panther goddess to break free. Nian, in his perfect God King mode, struck. With one hand, Nian grasped the Black Panther goddess wrist and, with the other, lifted Spider-Man. With a single, gentle toss, he flung her hundreds of meters away, hurling her out of the Vibranium Square. He had accomplished this. Only then did Nian, God King, look at the approaching Black Panther goddess, wondering, strange, have I seen you before? Despite resembling a humanoid female panther, brimming with feral, malevolent ethereal black flames like hair, Nian felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Where had I seen her before? The Black Panther goddess didn't respond. She grinned fiercely, seemingly devoid of any rationality. The blood moon between her brows shone a voluptuous crimson. With the demeanor of a bestial beast, she rammed her head directly into Nian's lower abdomen. Bang! Like a high explosive grenade exploding nearby, the air exploded, a surge of wind surged. This panther's head could easily dent a modern tank. However, Nian's nanosuit's lower abdomen was cracked by the impact, yet she maintained a firm grip on Nian's right wrist, her modest body standing perfectly still. The Black Panther goddess rolled her beastly eyes, her mouth twisting in a grimace. The pain. This impact was harder than vibranium. Her other claw instinctively reached forward, attempting to tear through the incredibly tough body. With a snap, the wrist of that claw was also seized by God King Nian. Nian's hands, like iron tongs, held the woman's wrist tightly. Now it's my turn. God King Nian smiled brightly, raised his hands, and lifted the entire body of the Black Panther goddess. Lift it high. Then, slam it down. Bang! The Black Panther goddess was slammed hard onto the vibranium square. If it weren't for the fact that vibranium itself absorbs a lot of sound and shock, the entire square would have shaken. Chapter 395 The Real Black Panther Goddess. Bang! 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 God King Nian, his entire body radiant with a holy white glow, tightly grasped the wrist of the humanoid female panther, shrouded in eerie black flames, repeatedly lifting and slamming her down. Each blow sent a slight tremor through the vibranium square. Imagine, if this were ordinary ground, a chasm would have formed. Roar! The humanoid female panther's crimson eyes continued to flicker, her slender, voluptuous body twitching slightly as she struggled, but to no avail. In the palace square, the people of Wakanda stood in a collective state of silence, watching the terrifying being, so unstoppable just moments before, being lifted and beaten by the Silver God. Many Wakandans felt a surge of joy. After all, the Black Panther King, the female captain of the royal guard, the clan leader, and the soldiers had all suffered at his hands. However, the thought that Wakanda was now on the opposite side of the Silver God made their fleeting joy turn to pain. Why provoke him? Bang! Carrying a cross formed by two divine swords, one gold and one silver, behind him, Nian, in God King mode, swung once more with all his might, slamming the opponent's beastly form to the square. This time, the eyes of the dark-skinned female leopard turned completely white, and her body slowly slumped, no longer resisting. Like a wounded beast, she let out a mournful cry, and her pitch-black tail drooped. The black, ethereal flames burning on her body dimmed slightly. Can we talk again? God King Nian, without even a breath, released a female leopard's wrist, lowering his gaze to examine her. In response to his words, the female leopard clutched her lower abdomen and raised her crimson eyes. Her once feral, brutal gaze now betrayed a hint of anger and fear. God King Nian raised his brows, thinking to himself, as expected. Nian had been observing the opponents since they appeared, and now he had finally come to the conclusion, they were unconscious. In other words, the other party lacked normal rational thought, being a true beast. Just now, the so-called guardian goddess, the Mother Panther, attacked the captain of the royal guard and the Avengers simply out of the instincts of a top hunter. However, there was another problem. If the other party was irrational, why did she strike with such precision and kill the king of Wakanda? Nian's gaze dropped to the blood moon between the brows of the humanoid Mother Panther. Furthermore, if the other party was irrational, how could she be so powerful? Yes, don't be fooled by Nian's easy suppression and defeat. In fact, if Nian hadn't slowed the other party down from the very beginning, the defeat would have been much more difficult. In Nian's opinion, the other party was only weaker than in God King mode, but her individual strength was enough to crush the Avengers before they split apart. Irrational, yet so powerful, really like my old 3-in-1 form, Nian muttered to himself, then waved his hand, and a stream of golden light landed on his hand. The lasso of truth. Before this divine artifact, there are no lies or secrets. As if sensing what Nian was planning to do to her, the humanoid female leopard, known as the Black Panther goddess in Wakanda, endured her injuries and climbed to her feet, attempting to flee. With a whiz, dust and sand surged. The female leopard had already sprinted 10 meters away. Though much slower than before, it still surpassed normal human vision. But then, a golden lasso, as if anticipating its movements, cast a single noose that looped around the female leopard's head, locking it around her neck. Don't go yet. I have something to ask you. God King Nian grasped the lasso of truth with both hands, yanking the rope back and dragging the feral female leopard back. The female leopard bit at the lasso of truth, attempting to rip it apart, like a completely mad leopard. Tell me something, Nian said, pulling her back within 10 meters. Curiously, who are you? Bound by the lasso of truth, she faced his question this time. The humanoid female leopard suddenly stopped moving, her jaws loosening from the rope, and a glimmer of life began to return to her crimson eyes. She paused, then spoke in a weak, feminine voice, I am. Bah. Before she could finish her words, the humanoid female leopard suddenly revealed a strange smile, and her eyes, which had once regained their spirit, were now filled with a strange, indifferent emotion. My name is the Black Panther Goddess. The black, ethereal flames of the humanoid female leopard intensified. She slowly rose, her back straightened, and blood-red leopard patterns appeared on her dark body. It was as if this was her true face. The injuries she had sustained were healing at a visible speed, and her aura was several times more powerful than before. Ignoring the lasso of truth around her neck, the Black Panther Goddess raised her head, glanced around, and said coldly, Black Panther Nation, has this day come to pass? It seems I helped you. Nian looked at the lasso of truth in his hand, and everything became clear. Yes, and thank you. The Black Panther Goddess's face remained expressionless, still brimming with savagery and ferocity, yet a transcendent divinity steadily controlled everything. However, since you're an intruder from the Black Panther Nation, I cannot let you go. The Black Panther Goddess stood on tiptoe with a wild yet graceful grace. The next moment, the Black Panther Goddess vanished from her spot, reappearing before Nian as if teleporting. Her slender legs shaped like a streak of black lightning, striking forward, boom. The air exploded, and God King Nian was sent flying backwards, instantly flying across the square and crashing into a Wakanda skyscraper 100 meters away. The skyscraper's glass shattered, and several floors of the exterior wall caved in. This thing. The Black Panther Goddess tore the lasso of truth from her neck. As soon as she let go, the lasso of truth vanished into thin air. He crouched slightly, poised for a leap, and then, in a flash, vanished from the spot. A single gust of wind swept outward, carrying dust and sand that blinded everyone. Within the dented, shattered skyscraper, the outer wall collapsed. Getting faster and stronger. God King Nian rose from his seat on the shattered sofa, dusting himself off, seemingly unharmed. Now, he understood everything. The opponent's initial state had been one of loss of control, the result of a failed fusion. Just like Nian's previous, 3-in-1 black kitten form, its consciousness shattered and collapsed. But just now, when Nian used the lasso of truth, he had inadvertently helped the opponent recover from that chaotic, beastly state. Now, the opponent was no longer a mere she-leopard possessing terrifying brute force. Instead, she possessed true control of the monstrous leopard's physique and strength. Tread. The Black Panther Goddess swiftly appeared within the skyscraper. Why aren't you injured? The Black Panther Goddess stared at Nian in surprise. Had her attack had no effect at all? He suddenly understood why Wakanda was conquered by one man. Chapter 396 Taming the Black Panther Guardian. Unlike others, the Black Panther Goddess's narrow, dark crimson eyes seemed to be able to ignore the light and clearly see the face and body of God King Nian. You possess a very unique and powerful energy, somewhat similar to the divine aura I wield. The Black Panther Goddess stared at God King Nian, muttering to herself, has a new race of gods been born on earth? Suddenly, the Black Panther Goddess's gaze fell on one of the two divine swords that had been suspended behind Nian. That sword, why does it look so familiar? The Black Panther Goddess's eyes widened. She felt that she had slept for too long, and the world had undergone many unexpected changes. I think we can sit down and have a good talk. As soon as God King Nian finished speaking, he suddenly lunged forward. Who is the leopard? The Black Panther Goddess sensed the danger and counterattacked with great speed. With a flick of her body, she quickly dodged Nian's attack. But she barely avoided the attack. Under the Black Panther Goddess' feet, in all directions, the steel bars and iron sheets in the room, every piece of metal, flew toward her, instantly enveloping her body into a massive metal sphere. If the Hulk had seen this, he'd have exclaimed, I know this trick. With a swish, the metal sphere was sliced open from the inside out, 4 or 5 smooth cuts. The Black Panther Goddess swiftly burst out from within, transforming into a bolt of black lightning and striking Nian. Clang. The silver divine sword flew out from behind her, blocking the almost invisible, swift claw strike. The blood-red claws clashed with a silver blade, sparking a shower of blazing, dazzling sparks. The Black Panther Goddess sneered, kicked back, shattering the floorboards, and swung her claws forward. The air surged, transforming into a black hurricane, strangling her opponent. God King Nian's expression remained unchanged. He grasped the hilt of the Vulcan sword and swung his sword to engage the opponent. Clang. 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 In less than a second, The sound lasted. The sword of God King Xinian and the claws of the Black Panther goddess clashed countless times. The two divine beings engaged in battle in the most brutal and direct manner. Swoosh! A flash of sword light sliced through everything within dozens of meters, even the atoms of dust particles. Swish! A sharp claw ripped the exterior wall and floor of one side of the room to shreds. God King Xinian, enveloped in white light, and the Black Panther goddess, shrouded in black flames, were like storms of energy, each gesture imbued with terrifying power. Boom! Under the startled gaze of the crowd in the palace square, the skyscraper suddenly collapsed in the middle. Bang! A black shadow flew out of the skyscraper, slamming diagonally into another tall building, and then burst out from the back again, seemingly piercing the entire structure. No. Some could barely make out. It wasn't a single figure, but rather two figures entangled in a battle. Clearly, two beams of light, one black and one white, were closely pressed together. The Black Panther goddess practically leaped into Xinian's arms, her left claw sinking into his groin, her right claw clawing at his neck, ready to rip him into pieces. Didn't we agree to talk things over? Xinian blinked innocently. You're too dangerous. We must eliminate you. The Black Panther goddess declared coldly, and she and Xinian slammed into a third tall building again, thrusting her claws forward. This strike would crack even vibranium. It's bad. Mr. Magneto is in danger. From the top of the giant Black Panther statue in Wakanda, Spider-Man watched Xinian and the other two crash through 3 buildings in a row, and hurriedly turned his head and said, "Mr. Stark, we have to help him." Nearby, Iron Man, who was activating a program to repair his nanosuit, replied helplessly, "How do you know he's in danger?" Spider-Man's eyes widened, bewildered, and he asked, "Isn't Mr. Magneto being outmatched right now?" "Look over there." Iron Man pointed toward the square of the Wakanda Palace. Spider-Man cast his gaze and was immediately stunned. Over a dozen fighter planes and thousands of metal weapons remained motionless in the air above the palace square. Tony Stark let out a heavy sigh. He's been remotely controlling all that metal, which means he has plenty of energy left. How is that possible? Spider-Man's heart trembled. While engaging in such intense close combat with the enemy, he still had enough energy left to remotely control hundreds of tons of metal? At the same time, he lunged through the third tallest building in the Wakanda capital, midair. The Black Panther goddess's beastly eyes were filled with disbelief. Her claws completely ripped through the thin yet tough nanosuit, but were blocked by the boy's seemingly ordinary inner skin. Impenetrable. That glowing, lustrous skin, harder than vibranium, was a true defensive artifact. Don't push your claws down any further, Xinian warned gently. Compared to other modes, the God King mode's strongest point isn't control, mental willpower, or speed or strength. Rather, it's physical strength. Indeed, on top of a perfect steel body, layered with the semi-awakened demigod physique and the inhuman strength of spider genes, Xinian's current physical strength far surpasses Superman, reaching a terrifying level. The Black Panther goddess's claws, powerful enough to tear apart a building, seemed like a tickle to him. Your attack is over, now it's my turn. The God King Xinian's lips curled upwards, his plummeting body flipping in midair, now sitting on the Black Panther goddess's back. He grasped the jet Black Panther's tail with his left hand, thrusting his right palm forward. A golden lasso of truth appeared, and he slid it around the Black Panther goddess's neck for the second time. Bang! The two, flipped, crashed to the ground, one above the other, into the massive crater they had created. Get out of here! Shame washed over the Black Panther goddess's face as she growled and struggled violently, but Xinian sat firmly on top of her, tugging tightly at her tail and the lasso of truth, pulling the humanoid female panther's body into a hunch. The sword of the god of fire and the sword of Odin flew down, supporting Xinian's suppression. The Black Panther goddess was faster than her God King form, but their strength was equally matched. Under the control of numerous divine artifacts and magnetism, the Black Panther goddess had no chance of recovery. Now, let's talk it over. God King Xinian sat on the Black Panther goddess's slender back and calmly asked, "What are your origins?" The lasso of truth was once again effective. The Black Panther goddess's eyes were filled with resentment as she quickly spoke the truth. "My name is the Black Panther goddess. I am one of the oldest gods born on Earth." God? Xinian already knew that in this world, any being or race that was powerful enough and capable of achieving immortality would often claim to be a god. So, Was this Black Panther goddess a creature born early on Earth? An ancient deity even older than Aunt Diana's lineage of Greek gods? Just now, you said one of my swords looked familiar. Do you know old Odin? Nian didn't think it was the Vulcan sword that had triggered her memory, but more likely Odin's sword. Odin, yes, this sword is indeed his. The Black Panther goddess looked at the golden sword that held her head down and spoke with difficulty. Of course I know Odin. Is that guy still alive? As if at this moment, she was recalling a terrible memory. The Black Panther goddess shuddered and muttered to herself, so that's why Odin gave you this sword. You are the chosen powerhouse of Earth's current era. They may have already set their sights on you. Chapter 397 The existence that keeps the Earth in captivity. God King Nian could clearly feel the Black Panther goddess trembling beneath him, her eyes filled with fear and terror, her flaming hair standing on end like an explosion. The Black Panther goddess, Wakanda's ancient patron saint and the source of King Black Panther's power, was afraid of something. Yes. Although my strength in this body is far less than before, your power is clearly far superior to that of the mighty ones of past ages. This world has nurtured another flock of plump lambs. The Black Panther goddess's weak, hoarse voice trembled. Who are they? God King Nian's mind stirred, feeling as if he had touched upon one of the ultimate secrets hidden in the present world. This secret might even be older than anything the Ancient One knew. Although the Black Panther goddess was reluctant to speak, she slowly spoke within the confines of the lasso of truth. They created this earth. They hold us captive like lambs. They will eventually descend upon us, bringing the end of all things and a new beginning. What are their names? God King Nian asked gravely, tightening the lasso of truth around the leopard's neck. The Black Panther goddess's beautiful yet feral head lifted slightly, as if whispering, they are called Heaven. Then, boom! A deafening roar echoed from the heavens. Over Wakanda, despite the afternoon sun, a sudden, thunderous blast echoed from the clear sky. The white cloud seemed to be split apart by this sudden, unpredictable bolt of lightning, revealing a clear view of the universe. As if awakened by the thunder, the Black Panther goddess's words abruptly stopped, the expression in her beastly eyes fading. His sturdy body sagged, his leopard head drooping, as if he had fainted. Answer me. Nian called out, but there was no response. Under his gaze, the blood-red leopard pattern on the Black Panther goddess faded completely, converging back to the area between her brows. The blood moon mark transformed into a pale red heart, quickly blending into her skin and disappearing. The black flames that had once resembled her extinguished, revealing the Black Panther goddess's true form, a mass of luminous golden curls cascading down her back, revealing a beautiful, wildly alluring face perched atop her delicate head. Her voluptuous body revealed its whiteness, and two slender, sleek legs cascaded to the ground. It was a beautiful woman. Nian looked remarkably familiar. Wasn't this his aunt's best friend and intergenerational enemy, the leopard barber Minerva? Nian had suspected this a while ago, but only now had his suspicions been fully confirmed. This guy, 3 years after not seeing him, he's still in Wakanda, even connected to the local guardian deity. Nian recalled the black flames emanating from him earlier. It felt like the power of a soul. Just like the witch he'd once encountered, possessed by a witch from another dimension. You're lucky to have met me. God King Nian shook his head, removing the lasso of truth from the unconscious woman's neck. He stood up and waved. 2 divine swords, one gold and one silver, dangled behind him. Nian rubbed the ring of dimensions, summoning a thick, exquisite cloak of magical levitation, which enveloped the woman like a blanket. If he stayed here, who knows what would happen to him from the enraged citizens of Wakanda. After all, Leopard Woman was an acquaintance my aunt had once recognized. Nian used the ring of dimensions to retrieve Leopard Woman, cloaked in the cloak of magical levitation, and returned her to the elemental dimension. He recalled the secret the Black Panther goddess had just revealed. God King Nian glanced up at the sky, a brilliant blue and clear. His spider sense hadn't detected anything, as if the thunderbolt had just been an accident. Was this world truly man-made? Nian thought again of the miniature planetary civilization he and Starro had created in the devouring dimension. It wasn't impossible, given sufficient strength, special abilities, and energy. Odin. Nian silently repeated the name. 3 years ago, before his death, he had met him in Washington Park. Old Odin hesitated, his face filled with regret, as if he were hiding something. It was unknown whether Odin was still alive. Never mind, let's deal with the current situation first. God King Nian temporarily suppressed his turbulent thoughts, shouldering his twin swords, and soared back toward the Wakanda Palace Square. Wakanda Palace Square. Over a dozen spaceships and countless metal artifacts remained fixed in midair, motionless. When Nian, bearing twin swords and surrounded by divine light, returned to the square, the wounded Wakandans, including the Black Panther King, had been carried outside for emergency treatment. Seeing his return, the Wakandan soldiers breathed a sigh of relief, yet a wave of inward trembling lingered. Having witnessed the extraordinary battle that had just seen skyscrapers crumble with ease, they no longer possessed the will to fight. Wakandans feared no death, but they feared a meaningless death, a war with no chance of victory. Atop the giant vibranium statue of the Black Panther, Iron Man patted Spider-Man beside him and said, "It's over. Let's go." If even the powerful Black Panther goddess couldn't stop them, there was no point in them staying. Is the ultimate winner of this war, Mr. Magneto. Spider-Man felt a sense of surrealism. He had single-handedly taken on a supernatural nation, possessed of vast technology and deities, and ultimately emerged victorious. After this battle, the world will change. Tony Stark declared gravely. In the past, even superhumans as powerful as gods were ultimately crushed by nations and institutions. This was the first time a single individual soared above a nation, nothing standing in the way of their power or their will. In Wakanda, in the palace square, a moment of silence fell. Wakandan soldiers suddenly parted like a tide, and Princess Shuri of Wakanda emerged, supporting a noble black woman clad in gold and vibranium. "Your Majesty," the surrounding Wakandans saluted. The Queen of Wakanda nodded gently, motioning for Princess Shuri to release her grip and approach the God King Nian alone. "His Majesty has been sent for treatment, and his life is temporarily saved. However, due to his limited mobility, I will be temporarily in charge of the Kingdom of Wakanda," the Queen of Wakanda said to the Wakandans nearby. Then, the Queen of Wakanda raised her head, barely gazing at the Divine King, Nian, radiating a holy aura. A complex expression crossed her face, but she finally let out a soft sigh and declared in a deep voice, "I, the Queen of Wakanda, on behalf of the nation of Wakanda, completely surrender." Wakanda Square fell into dead silence. No one spoke to stop her, helpless and powerless. Everyone knew there was no other option but to surrender. Before the Divine King, the venerable Queen of Wakanda bowed her head. Chapter 398 Wakanda surrenders, spoils of war. The Queen of Wakanda publicly declared her surrender, signaling the end of the war. The war ended within half a day, with Wakanda's defeat. Did they feel humiliated? The Wakandans in the square remained silent, naturally feeling a sense of shame, but given the overwhelming strength of their foe, they accepted the outcome. At least, they had fought their best, and their defeat was justified. But then, God King Nian spoke slowly, "Your surrender doesn't mean I accept it, right?" 2 or 3 Wakandan nobles fainted with rage, their bodies trembling. You want to destroy Wakanda? To slaughter us all? Shut up." The Queen of Wakanda shouted, then pursed her lips, released her scepter, and knelt before Nian. "Mother." Princess Shuri's eyes flushed, tears welling. But, before the Queen of Wakanda's knees touched the ground, she seemed to be seized by a force, her body frozen in midair, unable to kneel any further. "Don't try to stop me. There's no point in kneeling before me and begging for mercy. I don't like to oppress others like this," the God King Nian said casually. "You don't like to oppress others?" The people of Wakanda shuddered. "I'm a more down-to-earth person," Nian said calmly. "If you win, you can do whatever you want with me. But now that you lose, you must pay the price." The Queen of Wakanda took a deep breath and said, "We, Wakanda, are willing to pay a considerable price and reach an agreement to reconcile with you." "I don't like agreements or treaties either." Nian shrugged and raised a finger. "I will personally take the spoils of this battle from Wakanda, just once. After I leave Wakanda, my feud with your nation will be over." "That's it?" Many Wakandans were stunned. Just a one-time take of the spoils, no long-term agreement required. This was far better than they'd expected. "Yes," the Queen of Wakanda agreed immediately. "Except for our citizens, you may take anything within our kingdom today. I don't want any of your people either." God King Nian nodded. "Wouldn't it have been better if we had done this earlier?" He had been waiting for that exact word. Carrying his twin swords, God King Nian's sword, transforming into a stream of white light as he flew toward the Wakanda palace. He reached a patch of ordinary ground, unpaved with the vibranium, between the palace and the city. This should be it. Nian plummeted downward. Controlled by his own magnetic field, the two swords flew out from behind him, driving fiercely into the earth. The non-vibranium ground was as fragile as tofu, easily broken by the sword of Vulcan and the sword of Odin. The two swords, one gold and one silver, spun at high speed, their tips clashing like metal drills, instantly carving a hole straight into the ground. The two swords continued to dig. His long silver hair fluttering, God King Nian plunged from the air into the dug hole. Falling, falling, falling. He continued to fall for nearly 100 meters until a faint glimmer of civilization appeared before his eyes. Nian emerged from the hole, hovering in midair. His two divine swords, untouched by the earth, flew back to a point close behind him. Looking out, it became clear that the ground beneath Wakanda's capital, 100 meters below, was hollow. This hollow area, nearly 1 or 2 kilometers in diameter, held suspended train tracks. God King Nian soared forward, reaching the deepest depths of the hollow. Combining magnetic field control with spider sense, he scanned the area like a state-of-the-art detector. Nian's eyes sparkled with divine light. With a swipe of his right hand, the Vulcan sword flew out at breakneck speed, piercing the deepest rock wall of the hollow area ahead. With a swish, the Vulcan sword easily penetrated halfway, then abruptly stopped, as if piercing an extremely solid shield wall. Buzz! The sword of the god of fire emitted a soft hum, shattering the surrounding rock layers and revealing what lay within, a silvery white metal ore with veins as thin as the tip of an iceberg. This was the foundation of Wakanda's prosperity, its position at the forefront of civilization outside Earth, and the world's richest mineral resource. Vibranium. This is what it means to truly have a mine at home. God King Nian couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Vibranium, also known as sound-absorbing steel, is indestructible and possesses properties such as kinetic energy absorption. It's considered a top-tier strategic metal resource in the universe, not just on Earth. Outside Earth, even a small piece of vibranium ore is priceless. It never circulates. Even fewer have been crafted into weapons, one of which is Captain America's legendary shield. Yet, within Wakanda, this vibranium is so abundant it's almost untold. God King Nian glanced around. He now understood why the Wakanda capital was hollow beneath the ground. Because, originally, beneath Wakanda, there was nothing but vibranium. Wakanda had used the vast vibranium veins it had unearthed to become a technologically advanced nation. And even if Wakandans had dug for generations, they still hadn't exhausted the vibranium beneath the ground. God King Nian could sense that there was at least a mountain-sized expanse of virgin vibranium beneath the ground. That's not even close to being filthy rich. Nian shook his head. This was a golden pig? A vibranium pig? It could be said that over half of Earth's wealth was concentrated in Wakanda. With so much vibranium, even the dimensional ring couldn't move it. God King Nian pondered, activated his special necklace, and a blue mist of light enveloped him. The next moment, God King Nian appeared at the headquarters of the Destiny Alliance within the Devouring Dimension. Within a room within the magnificent castle, a pleasant, hearty laugh echoed. A petite yet mature girl with short blonde hair was seen sprawled on the sofa, teasing a kitten. Her hands were weaving patterns with white spider silk, her legs clad in black stockings swaying back and forth behind her hips. Ah, is it over yet? Gwen blinked at the sight of Nian appearing, her legs still swaying, her feet gleaming against the gleaming black light. Almost done. Borrow the little emperor. Nian beckoned, and the little emperor instantly freed himself from Gwen's chest, landing gracefully on his shoulders. Gwen's hands wove a heart shape with white spider silk, her beautiful legs resting on her back with exceptional flexibility, her chest pressed against the soft sofa. She purred her lips meaningfully. Would you borrow me? The God King Nian frowned. There's a war going on. I'll deal with you when I get back. With these words, Nian, carrying the little emperor, was once again transported away by the swirling blue mist. Gwen was left alone, her face flushed red, regretting her impulsive actions. But why was there a hint of anticipation? God King Nian brought the little emperor back to the hollow underground of Wakanda and rubbed his hands over the vibranium mine. Then, let's dig. Meow. The little emperor seconded with full energy. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic world. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399, Clear Wakanda. Buzz. The capital of Wakanda. The ground suddenly shook violently, as if in an earthquake, swaying tall buildings and even the suspended tracks. What happened? Earthquake. The Wakandans, fresh from the war, were in a state of shock and confusion. Wakanda had never experienced an earthquake since ancient times. Of course, they weren't overly concerned. Even a magnitude 8 or 9 earthquake could be easily withstood by the nation. Only the royal family of Wakanda's nobles' expressions changed. Princess Shuri of Wakanda lay on the ground, listening with her eyes closed. She stood up and said to the Queen of Wakanda, "The source of the earthquake seems to be coming from the primitive mining area south of the palace. It was caused by him." The Queen of Wakanda smiled wryly but gave no orders. This was what the enemy deserved, the spoils of war. Meanwhile, deep within the hollow earth beneath Wakanda, 2 divine swords, 1 gold and 1 silver, along with a dozen ferociously extended tentacles, gradually excavated the vibranium mountain from the unexplored primitive mining area, separating it from the surrounding rock layers. In fact, God King Nian could easily use his magnetic field controller to forcibly remove the massive vibranium mine buried deep underground, but that would cause the city of Wakanda above to collapse. The people are innocent. From the outset, Nian had no intention of destroying Wakanda. His goal was vibranium. By intimidating Wakanda, he could also serve as a warning to others, and he wouldn't bother engaging in future intrigues with Earth's own nations. It's too low class. Together with the orange and yellow cat-like devourer, Little Emperor, they mapped out the general outline of the vibranium vein. God King Nian waved his hand, retracting his 2 divine swords, and said to Little Emperor, "Now, it's up to you." Meow. Little Emperor leaped from Nian's shoulder onto the massive vibranium mine, its tiny, fanged mouth open as if about to take a bite. The next moment, its mouth widened into a small black hole, and a dozen hideous tentacles stretched out and wrapped around the vibranium surface. Gurgle. A cat, barely the size of 2 palms, sprawled on all fours atop the vibranium mountain, its adorable expression aching with effort as it began devouring a vein of vibranium hundreds of meters long. 10 seconds later, a blue mist of light emerged from the hollow underground. "Thank you for your hard work," Nian said, having just used up the day's use of his special necklace magic weapon. He returned the Little Emperor, whose belly remained motionless, to the devouring dimension. While the Little Emperor was within the devouring dimension within his belly, it became sealed, a truly independent universe. Next, God King Nian glanced upward, about to return to the surface of Wakanda's capital, but as if sensing something, he cast his gaze towards the newly hollowed-out underground area. What was this inexplicable feeling? God King Nian appeared somewhere unknown in Wakanda. This place, nestled between the surface and the subterranean, was a mysterious cavern connected to the Wakanda royal palace. Strangely enough, it was. The cave was devoid of any high-tech gadgets, not even a single light. Its ancient appearance, preserved for millennia, was deserted, and the humming of the wind could be heard. God King Nian glanced briefly inside. To him now, the presence of light made no discernible difference. This cavern contained altars and clay pots, and fresh footprints in the soil suggested the presence of many visitors. Deep within the cavern, Nian noticed a patch of heart-shaped grass he had never seen before. Its shape resembled the blood mark on the Black Panther goddess's body, and it also held a remarkable and mysterious energy. "I see," Nian's eyes flickered with realization. These heart-shaped grasses were the medium left by the Black Panther goddess, allowing her to connect with others. Generations of Black Panther kings must have relied on these heart-shaped grasses to draw upon her inherited power. Nian recalled the recent battle. Perhaps Barbara the leopard woman had also ingested the heart-shaped herb here, or perhaps because their psychic compatibility was perfect, she had gained the power of the Black Panther goddess, even greater than that of the king of Wakanda. That greedy beautiful leopard mother, who had been stealing away all day, had finally caught her. God King Nian had no intention of gathering the heart-shaped herb. Rather than borrowing the power of the Black Panther goddess, he preferred to directly utilize the abilities of his aunt and others. What caught God King Nian's attention was an ancient portrait graffitied with colorful plant branches and leaves on the wall deep within the cave. It had survived from a distant era, thousands of years ago. Below the portrait appeared a humanoid leopard lying on the ground, an armored deity wielding divine weapons, a blonde woman with outstretched arms, and several mysterious beings in bizarre attire. They looked up at the sky, as if facing a formidable enemy. From the sky, several humanoid figures descended. They, God King Nian muttered softly. Long ago, the Black Panther goddess had joined forces with Odin of Asgard to fight something together. At that moment, Nian was consumed by thought. He thought of Odin's battle with the ancient Greek gods for their descendants, of Ego, the self-proclaimed god, who spent his life pursuing eternity, and of Apocalypse's words that Earth held a vast secret. It all seemed to connect, somehow. It was a truth about the world that would break even the most ordinary human sanity. Odin, Nian thought. If he were still alive, finding him would reveal all the secrets of the past. From the darkness of the underground, the God King Nian returned to the brightly lit surface. Have you collected all the spoils? The Queen of Wakanda, watching from afar, inquired as Nian, who had returned to the square as if it were her own home, asked. 2 more things are missing. Take them and I'll leave, Nian replied bluntly. What are they? The Queen couldn't help but ask. Nian didn't respond. However, the Queen and the Wakandans present soon understood. Crack. Countless people in Wakanda watched in astonishment. But it was the magnificent Wakanda Palace, nestled in the heart of Wakanda's capital. The entire Vibranium Palace trembled, lifting a portion of the Vibranium Square's surface along with it. Just like the spaceships and weapons, the Vibranium Palace lifted off the ground and soared. The Queen of Wakanda finally realized that the enemy was actually trying to take the entire Wakanda Palace away as trophies. The other Wakandan nobles were stunned. That was Wakanda's most prestigious royal symbol. Not only was the vibranium used to forge it priceless, but the palace also contained Wakandan treasures and technology. This was tantamount to ripping out the heart of Wakanda. Stop him, stop him. Some Wakandan nobles nearly vomited blood. But it was just talk. Surrender was already surrendered, it was also a promised trophy. Nian, still very kind, stopped the entire palace at a low altitude, allowing the remaining Wakandan guards to evacuate. But in the eyes of many Wakandans, Nian, who shone with a holy radiance and resembled a god, was practically the same as the devil. Look at him, is he still human? Chapter 400. A large Shura field erupts. On an artificial planet, the Destiny Alliance headquarters sat atop a central mountain. Inside a magnificent and luxurious palace room, Gwen happily embraced the little orange cat, who had emerged from the blue mist. But as the mist quickly dissipated, her expectant face tinged with disappointment. What? Isn't that Nian guy done yet? She felt a bit uneasy at the sudden bustle of activity from Nian, who had been lying flat on his back. However, as Nian put it, carrying her strength, they were fighting together. That statement was truly. Gwen blushed inexplicably, steam practically rising from her smooth forehead. A bit lonely, huh? Let's wait a little longer together. Gwen gently rubbed Xiaohong's head. Just then, footsteps echoed from the headquarters hall behind them. Nian. Gwen, holding Xiaohong, turned her head in surprise, then froze. It was a stunning red-haired woman, looking 2 or 3 years older than her, yet possessing a more voluptuous and mature figure. She wore a figure-hugging dress, her curves sleek and graceful like a peach. Most importantly, the woman before her, clad in a long pink dress, had skin as white as a pearl in a shell, radiant and luminous. Her aura was also remarkably noble. Gwen looked at Mara, while Mara looked back at Gwen. Their eyes met, their gazes simultaneously drawn to the matching silver crown rings on each other's hands. You have the dimensional ring, which means you're also a member of this alliance. Although Gwen's guard had dropped, a hint of hostility remained. Mara naturally understood where this hostility came from. She smiled softly, saying, My name is Mara. According to Nian, I should be the 6th member. Gwen replied with an inexplicable pride, I'm the 3rd, Gwen Stacy. As if indirectly hinting, at least, I came before you. Nice to meet you, little Gwen. Mara wore an elegant smile, seemingly unfazed. Her fists clenched quietly, her head held high and noble, her status forbidding her to bow. However, she had already grasped the situation. Given the other person's age, they must be Nian's classmate, or perhaps a childhood sweetheart. This kind of extraneous relationship certainly held a greater weight in their hearts than her own. Little. Gwen's beautiful brows knitted together. Was this a suggestion that she was still too immature, or childish? Her rosy lips pursed, but due to her personality, She couldn't utter a single word of mockery. I seem to have seen you somewhere. Gwen stared at Mara and quickly recalled, oh, 3 years ago, on the Grand Era. Mara nodded gently, I remember too. You're the petite girl in the Spider-Man suit. I'm not small. Gwen snorted softly, thrusting forward, her short-sleeved shirt creating a large, towering curve that squeezed the Devourer's head, making it breathless. Mara wasn't small either, but still a little behind. Big isn't always good, Empress Mara said seriously. It's like fruit, the color and juiciness also matter. Gwen turned away, blushing. She had just said that in the heat of the moment. In reality, Gwen couldn't openly discuss things with others, let alone compete. The little emperor blinked adorably, unable to understand. This was like two people meeting for the first time. What was the point of competing here? Wait, you said you were the sixth. Gwen suddenly discovered a blind spot she hadn't noticed before. You said you were the third member. Mara realized. There were two more between the sixth and third rings. Yes, between you two is us. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out from the entrance to the hall. Gwen and Mara glanced sideways, only to see two other women walk in side by side. Both were at least 1.7 meters tall, and their auras were strikingly powerful. One had long, dark blonde hair flowing down her shoulders, a handsome face with a touch of coolness. She wore a black spy leather jacket, which hugged her flawless figure, a figure of impeccable fitness and slenderness. The other had unusually natural green hair. Her features were incredibly delicate, yet she wore a men's suit with 2 buttons undone at the collar, exuding an unruly and domineering aura. The former exuded a righteous, serious, and calm demeanor. The other exuded a sinister aura, exuding an uninhibited and casual air. Both walked with a gusto, exuding a sense of decisiveness and sharpness. The woman in the spy uniform had spoken. I'm the 5th member. You can call me Sky. Looking forward to your guidance. Sky's eyes narrowed slightly, and out of professional habit, he began to carefully assess the people on the field. I'm the 4th, North Star. Lorna folded her arms, not even revealing her real name, nor showing any interest in continuing the conversation. Clearly, she was the most difficult person on the field to get along with. Gwen and Mara both noticed this. Meanwhile, Sky, the deputy director of SYNOPSIS, also identified the identities of the people on the field. Spider-Woman, Sky was the first to greet Gwen. Miss Shockwave, Gwen smiled and nodded. They had collaborated and interacted before, one in the Avengers and the other in SYNOPSIS, but they had only used titles. This was the first time they had met by their real names. Sky glanced at Mara, who was beside Gwen. She hadn't participated in the Great Time Incident 3 years ago, but she had done in-depth research afterward. Atlanteans from the underwater world, they must be quite high-ranking. Sky thought to herself. As for Polaris, Sky already knew she was the culprit causing Iron Man so much trouble, the master of magnetic field control. Now, inside the Destiny Alliance's hall, 3rd ring Spider-Woman, 4th ring Polaris, 5th ring Sky, and 6th ring Mara were meeting for the first time. In a somewhat delicate atmosphere, Polaris Lorna opened her arms, a smile rising wildly. How about we have a fight? It's like getting to know each other. The other three's expressions changed slightly, but none of them refused. They all possessed extraordinary abilities, having reached the highest levels, even the pinnacle, of their respective fields, possessing their own pride. At this moment, it was as if no one would yield to the other. At this moment, Nian naturally had no idea that something had happened to the Destiny Alliance. At this moment, God King Nian landed on top of the Wakanda Palace, using the entire floating palace as a pedalo. Under the bloodshot eyes of countless Wakandans, he flew out of Wakanda. This was the so-called trophy. The Queen of Wakanda shuddered, but quickly recalled what they had said about taking the last 2 items. One was the royal palace, and what was the other? Suddenly, Nian, who hadn't left Wakanda yet, waved his hand, and the giant vibranium statue of the Black Panther in the Wakanda capital levitated. The Wakanda totem took flight. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.